One's not coming.
One's not coming, Tina's not coming. I'm not sure if Cass will be here or not.
Do I count the quorum on that?
It only applies to the mayor.
Right, we need to pretty much Did they bring her?
No, I took her to take her. I'll pull the rest and he calls.
Swallow right in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it couldn't possibly be just allergies or something.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think of that. Sorry. I was all misty.
No, I was just,
We'll need to her back, I wasn't listening to you.
Boss is always waiting for feedback for him.
no. Okay, I'm gonna call this meeting to order. First, we will do any additions to the agenda from July 5th.
Agenda for
Or,
tonight.
sorry, additions to or approval of the agenda for tonight.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second. Okay, we will go to visitors to be heard.
Vote, Chair, or Chairwoman. A vote on the agenda.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those not in favor, same sign. So we'll move to visitors to be heard. So anyone in the audience wishing to utilize visitors to be heard, please raise your hand to be recognized. You'll have to utilize the podium. You have 2 minutes to speak. And I just ask that you preserve decorum while you're at the podium.
I have just a question on that. Is now the time to talk, or do we wait till the baseball?
So we will have the work session where just 1 or 2 individuals who wish to speak on behalf of the group can come up to the table, and it will be more of an open discussion format.
At that time?
Correct.
Okay.
But for that, we ask for a representative or 2. So if there's anybody else wishing to speak. Yes.
Am I on the agenda for the community garden? Should I have to be heard now or later?
The community garden proposal is the first item on our new business, so we'll take that up at that point.
Okay.
Yep, so if we have questions, we can call on you at that point for that. Any other visitors to be heard? Okay, we'll go to the minutes from July 5th.
I just have a question on the park board attendance fees. It's like the middle sentence. It says that Bobby Joe, the mayor spoke with Bobby Joe, and she is no longer interested in being on the park and rec board, and she would like to be reappointed.
Oh, okay. I'll talk to Cassie about that one, but I'm pretty sure that's a mistake.
Yeah.
So we can amend that. If I recall correctly, I'll probably go back to the meeting video, but I believe Ms. Lynn said she no longer interested and would not like to be reappointed. Or would have to resend out, look at the video.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting, or the agenda, with that correction made.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. So on to old business, updates on assigned tasks.
Tina is typically the one that reports on some of this. I don't know that we have a ton of stuff from the last meeting to follow up on. I think in terms of the park repairs projects, there's a few things here and there that have been done. The pool attendance have kind of been retasked, the recreation department, the parks department, for a few hours every week to get some things done. So we've done a lot of painting in the past week and a half, I think, taking care of all the picnic tables, all the baseball bleachers have been repainted to green on the front facing sides of that. We'll have them on a few other things here and there for the rest of the summer. We've also got the 2 new basketball hoops, poles, and backboards ready to go. So at some point in the next, hopefully next few weeks, we'll be taking the old ones down and installing new, set the new ones in concrete and go from there. In terms of the softball field project that was picked for the discretionary project this year, I'm trying to nail down when the fall high school softball season will be done, see if we can get that done yet this year or not. I think in the meantime, we're probably going to be just ordering all the supplies and materials that we need for it. That's something that was in this year's budget, so we can start making those improvements as soon as possible.
I did see KJ was measuring boards for the skate park.
Yes.
So they can try to resurface some of that stuff potentially.
Yeah, last year we got all the sides repainted. What he was looking for was the ramp material itself, I don't know if it's rubber, what it's called, but now we have to try and find the right size dimensions for those ramps that need to be replaced, the ramp surfaces. So, at some point, I think, if we can't do it yet this year, we will. I think we'll probably have to wait till next spring to let the current ones find their way out. But lofts have always kind of been a tough topic over at that skate park. So once we can, mitigate the current loss that are there, seal those ramps up a little bit better and keep them out for good, so.
Do we know who got the service for the skateboard ramps last time?
Anything else for updates on assigned tasks?
West Evergreen Park, the shelter looks great, I think.
Thank you, Sean.
I think you have a couple of volunteers that want to paint it as well now, so.
Yeah, yeah. There's one payment. 26 bucks, that's 0.
You explain what you all did to improve that part.
So they had sheets of plywood for windows, or it was kind of being used as a potential, like, when it was a hockey rink, I guess it was like a warming shelter. It couldn't have been very warm there, but took down all the plywood around the windows, took all the steel from the side of it, and then there was a whole bunch of like 2x8s that were holding steel up, so took all that stuff down and cleaned the concrete quite a bit, knocked down the last mess. Removed a lot of hardware like hooks and nails and that kind of stuff, so.
I think the hockey nets are still out there. We
Yeah.
can't get rid of those yet, so we'll bring those down to the park shop.
Yeah,
We might just put those on the surplus list if we don't have any other use for them.
yeah. Yeah, and if the boys have some time this week, we can send them down there to paint those picnic tables too. Maybe they are, I didn't.
No, I think they were down there last week.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other assigned task updates? Okay, we'll move to park discretionary budget.
As this year, this project, we're hoping to get done yet this year. Once we get that final schedule for fall softball, we'll have a good idea of when we can pull this project off, and we'll identify a date at that point.
Are they delayed?
No, I don't think they are. I think their schedule is set to start normally. But we don't have a schedule from them yet, so. I would expect that we'll have that in a few days. So we'll be looking to identify a date later on this fall, and probably get as many people on hand as we can to help out. So in the meantime, we're going to be ordering materials. We're going to need a lot of Averline. It's hard to estimate how much we'll be able to reuse. So either way, I mean, at some point, we're going to use all the Averline we ordered regardless. So
Do we have any currently?
we have a small pile.
When you get those kind of dates, do we need to, we had a volunteer offering to kind of shoot it and stuff like that, the grading and stuff, we need to kind of get a hold of him and
Yes.
do that, right?
Yep. I think to have that person on site while we're out there working on it would be very helpful. At this point, it's gonna be a couple of us in a skid loader,
Right.
you know,
I was
probably
hoping to
probably
have some
myself included, but.
students out to volunteer from our turf program, but with COVID restrictions, they're not allowed to campus for volunteer activities.
Okay.
So unfortunately, it'll be us and I guess other people will need help. Anything else for park discretionary budget?
No.
Okay, we can move on to new business. The first item on the agenda is community garden proposal.
So thank you for letting me come tonight. I just want to give you a little background on me before we get started. I've lived here for all but 6 years of my life. Been very involved in the community over the years. I've taught Sunday school, Bible school, confirmation, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, town coordinator for Girl Scouts, coached Y-ball, and I was one of the ones that started our T-ball program probably 25 years ago, so hopefully your children have gotten interest in that. I started the summer sign-up about the same time, and about that time Terry Clinton and I started the soccer program. So I've been involved with our community for a long time. My personal interests right now are I like to garden. I've done it for several years. I helped my sister get the tea community garden up and going. I've helped the Petal Pals down in the gardens for several years, but it doesn't look so good this year. And I also been and played at Cook Avenue Greenhouse for the past 13 years, so I do have a lot of gardening experience. With the COVID, I think the need is there for gardening. People want to take care of themselves and be self-sufficient. At the greenhouse this year, we could not keep seeds or plants in stock. I mean, selling tomatoes is big because people want to garden. They just want to take care of themselves. So I think it's a really good idea to get going. A lot of towns have it. We just need, I'm looking for land and a little bit of help. Mostly, I have a list of rules that we've put together, and I can go over those quick with you if we want to. People that garden are elderly that don't have the space, people that live in apartments that don't have the space, or maybe even you need a tiller. And people don't have the know-how to do that. And I think community gardening, it's a good stress reliever, it's community building. The people that garden a long time like to share their secrets, which helps. And then I think it also teaches people that if we have an abundance, that we can help other people out. So that's kind of where I'm going with that. And if I get cooperation, I haven't made contact with him yet, I'm kind of waiting for school to start, but I'd maybe like to get a hold of that ag instructor and partner up with him, seeing if I can find a kid every kid needs a CDE project. I don't know if any of you know what CDE is, but I've also started the FFA support group. So as my kids grew, ran the after prom program for several years. So I'd like to partner up with one of the FFA kids, hoping that I could mentor that person through the steps of the years, and then maybe let that kid take that on as a project, because at the state level, they need to do a project, CDE. So some of the guidelines that we have. Community gardening, I think it's best if everybody gets their own individual spot. Some community gardens, like my nephew works for Poet, and they garden all together, but then they give all the gardening produce to the Feeding South Dakota, where if you each have your own spot, and you charge them a small amount for that spot, like $5, which help covers the cost of the water, barely anything. But we have found in the past that if you charge a small amount, even so much as $5, people then own it. They take care of it. If you let them do it for free, they really don't care. They just let it go to seed or whatever. So ideally, this is kind of our graph from the tea garden. They get a 6x6 plot, and then there's a 3-foot walking path in between. And the walking path basically has preen on it, which is the pre-emergent, so none of the weeds and seeds grow. And then you get some grass clippings and you put it on there, and it helps with the weed control also. And I don't know, do we collect when we mow the ball fields, do we collect? We don't keep any of the grass clippings? Okay, so that was one of my questions, if we could just keep those clippings. But I can probably get a hold of the lawn service. I have a nephew that does a lawn service that could probably just drop his clippings there instead of taking it out to the dump. Maybe he likes me. But anyway, so our guidelines, I have a whole list of guidelines for people to follow, because I think you gotta have rules and you gotta stick to the rules. So I'll just quick go over some of those. People who choose to garden commit to maintaining their garden plot for the entire season. Excessive weeds will eliminate you from any future gardening, so somebody has to oversee that. If you ask for a $5 payment, that will get you a 6x6 plot, and we would limit, because we don't know the interest yet, we would limit to one plot. But like in tea, some people have 2 or 3 plots if we don't have enough interest. Each gardener must plant at least 1 row of blooming flowers. And the reason that you do the blooming flowers is because then that attracts the insects, so your pollination goes on. Everybody has to control their own weeds, and help control in the pathways. And gardeners are encouraged to make soil amendments because not all soil is ideal, from me to Chad, and, or you're not Chad, I don't think that's the word, Chuck. Looked at the name thing, sorry. But soil can be different in that short of amount of time. I mean, clay soil is terrible to deal with. It's really hard. Everybody needs to take care of their own trash, meaning you can't just plant your stuff and leave it sit. So we would need some type of a trash receptacle somewhere close to there so they can put their stuff in. And then you have to limit your garden activity to just daylight hours. You don't want people out there, but a lot of old time gardeners like to get up early in the morning garden. People that are working go after work. So, but then that kind of helps keep the kids out of there too. And then we also need to provide them with some type of means to water. So we need to be somewhere near a hydrant of some sort. And then you have to be neighborly, which means stay out of other people's stuff, don't help yourself to other people's gardens. And if people are complaining about you taking things out of their gardens, that also eliminates you from gardening the next year. And what we would do then, we would till it, we would commit to tilling it, taking care, or getting the walking paths ready to go, and then everybody has to have their stuff out of there no later than October 1, because some of your old farmers will leave your carrots and your potatoes and stuff in the ground until frost. But they have to get, like people use cages for their tomatoes. You need to get all that stuff out of there to till. And ideally this year, because if it would be the first year, you'd probably want to till it this fall and then again next spring, because it would be fresh ground. I do kind of have a guesstimate of what it's going to cost. I did fill out a community grant, but I kind of had to leave it open because I don't have a for sure thing from you guys. But I'm guesstimating that the first year would probably cost somewhere around $500. And basically that would cover some advertising, some signage. I don't know if this would be necessary or not, but like a timer maybe on the spigot, so people couldn't go out there at kids, I'm sorry, I'm blaming it on kids. People go out there at midnight and turn water on, let it run, or some people turn the water on and go home and have supper and forget about it and come back, things like that. We need to provide some hoses, or wheels to put the hose on, some cream. We need to mark everybody's spot somehow and maybe put some light fencing, just rope it off so people kind of stay out of the area. And then I'm not sure because I did not look into it, and maybe we could even find a volunteer to till it with something large. A farmer ideally with a fairly large till. I think with fresh ground it would be hard on just a regular tiller that you and I would have. I do have some pictures of what, and my printer's running out of ink, I do have some pictures of what the tea community garden looks like. It's gone over very well.
Amy, do you have a plan for just envision of an aerial view where you see this going, the location?
Chad Wolf suggested maybe Westerman Park. I would say ideally that's not, but the way it sounds is you guys are gonna get rid of the skating rink.
You mean West Evergreen?
Yeah, Western Green, yeah. You're gonna get rid of the skating rink?
Yeah, so we're waiting to hear back on a grant for 2 sand volleyball courts there, but that would not take up that whole space, I don't think.
So T has, theirs is twice as big as what, I'm thinking if we get some information out, I would think 20 plots maybe the first year. And
What would
so-
that total size be?
Well,
With T's layout, it's about 2,100 square feet, so if you're thinking half that, it's probably about 1,100 square feet.
yeah, have you done stuff with the T?
No, I just see here.
Oh,
yeah.
you're kind, yeah.
What size
Because
is the
say
volleyball
T
court?
has 40 spots.
The 2 volleyball courts is 7,200 square feet.
So I'm estimating with 20 spots, you'd need like a 35 by 40 foot area, or a little more. And another thing that you gotta take into consideration is in the advertising, I think elderly people like to do this, and maybe some, I don't know the right word, people that are uncomfortable walking on unstable ground. And you try to make sure that those people get the outside of the garden because it's hard for them to walk on a soft ground.
Accessibility.
Yeah, I think that's probably, that's kind of what they do, but then some people, because they amend the soil, they ask for their same spots back, which could be a possibility too. That would have to be something that would be worked out later on. Because, like I said, when you amend the soil, if you have a clay spot and you put some gypsum in there or some perlite or vermiculite in there to try and amend that soil to get it to work better, I don't wanna do it for the next guy, I'd rather have my same spot back, and I understand that.
So, it's Amy, right?
Right.
Okay, so are you looking for, do you think that you will take the lead in the initiative? I know you have already, but just going forward, what I see from this is that, you have the advertising to the community, the tilling, the maintenance, making sure the water's getting there, and just overall collecting fees, which I assume would come to the city, but communicating that with people who are interested in. And I see that as needing to really be a committee that would oversee this process and, what's the process for if an individual is not taking care of their plot?
Right.
Does that come to the Parks Board, or is that your committee that would then oversee that?
Well, that would kind of be up to you. I mean, I would gladly, obviously, I started many of these other projects, the softball, baseball, and eventually you gotta walk away from it, you gotta let somebody else take over. But I would definitely commit to it for a few years, and that's why I'd like to maybe get an FFA kid, maybe snag one of those freshmen kid.
Well, and I see scout projects too.
Yeah.
There's scouts that are needing
Yeah.
projects. I
It's-
think it's a great
FFA,
idea, and I
yeah.
commend you for wanting to do something for the community, so I would like to see it come to fruition. I do think it's a great idea to move forward with the LACF grant. I think reviewing those policies and just making sure that there's no income there, and I know Nate can probably help with that to make sure that this is a qualified grant, something that we can apply for a grant, which I would assume that it is. So at this point, what do you need from us, or what can we?
I need a commitment on the land and where, and then we need to probably work together with somebody to plot out the area, and then maybe figure out, just put it out there, see what the interest is, and then, if we can maybe round up a farmer with a big tiller would be nice, but I guess I did not look into how much it would cost to rent a large tiller. Because with fresh ground, it's gonna be need to work quite a bit. And I think ideally this fall, and then again next spring. Cause I till my garden every fall and spring.
I don't think we can commit to anything, we're just an advisory board. So I think that's probably gotta go to the council
Right,
to get any sort of, anything
right.
sketched out, and I don't know if it's part of your master plan, even out of the parks plan, or anything like that.
I think the city council needs a recommendation from the Parks Board on where they should go. I think that would be appropriate, given the role of the board as an advisory board. But also taking into account the fact that this board has, in the past expressed a vision for field use, or land use throughout the park system. So, if we're going to do this, I don't want to put it somewhere that's in 5 years going to be torn up and either moved or not done again. That it's not in the way of a future plan somewhere. So, it does limit where you could put it in that regard. I think West Evergreen, would be a great spot. I don't know what we do for water there yet.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I kinda eyeballed it, would it be possible to put it on the fence line of the old football field? Because then you have your water spigot at the concession stand.
Yeah,
Is
so,
that a metered water down there, so you could kinda guesstimate how much water you'd be using at the?
yeah, everything's metered. So we could easily,
People could drive up, just because elderly people could just drive right up to it. I mean, that's a big issue
That
for
would
some
take some
people.
dirt work in that space.
What
Well, another thing
if-
with West
what-
Evergreen too is, what if, say, everybody loves it, and you wanna expand it, so
Yeah.
you expand there and not move it
you
again.
don't have any space for it. Yeah.
There, I think on the west side of West Evergreen, there is
Yeah.
actually can be used.
Where that bird would come out.
Playground equipment going in the middle.
Do you think you'd have trouble with kids? Are there many kids that
Yeah.
play down there in the summer?
No,
Because kids
not
like
now.
to throw tomatoes and.
So here's my concern with the old football field is going up against that fence line. A lot of people park in that parking lot and they walk to the baseball or the batting cages. Some people even drive through there, and I'm concerned about people just not knowing that there's the community garden there. There's a lot of kids that run through there during baseball games and that kind of thing, so I would see that being an issue. And then West Evergreen, as long as it fits with the plan was, the projection was to put volleyball courts there if our grant goes through. But if it can both fit, do you think that there will be so much traffic there that that'll become an issue?
You're not gonna want the garden by the volleyball courts, I'm thinking.
Right.
So we'll have the volleyball courts, the shelter, playground equipment, then on the west side, east side of it.
If you move the garden about halfway down, what is that pile of dirt down there? Is it dirt, is it gravel, is it,
In the old football
Down
field?
there.
That's,
It's
yeah.
Agar line
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
for the fields.
So, I can't really point on this, but, those piles that you see on the right third there, those are all of our used piles. There is some dirt there, but mostly everything.
okay,
That long parcel that goes north to south right here, that's actually a public right of way. And, I mean, there's no real plan to put a street there at any time in the near future. That may be a decent spot for this. I think it's right across from the new concession stand, so water is relatively close.
Do you know where he's referring
I do.
to?
I do.
It's kind of blocked off too from where everybody.
Well, I was
Yeah,
saying
there's
that
not like a
could, that
trees
could maybe,
there, so-
that's partially fenced off there. You could maybe just put a little gate.
If it is, it's not the city's fence, we'll probably have to move it, but
Oh, okay.
How high are those trees? I mean, obviously you need pretty good sun for a garden.
You do.
yeah.
Is that blocked
Well,
for the?
Is it
I hate to put it
trees?
this way, but those are ash trees, and at some point they're going to have to come out anyway.
Well, is there shrubs there on the left
On the
too?
left, there's I wanna say it's a hedge, maybe 8 to 10 feet tall.
Yeah, I don't think it's that, I think 6 feet, that evergreens pretty tall, but those bushes aren't very
Yeah.
tall.
So that wouldn't look it.
So it might not hurt just to get a good take on what the sun's doing there.
And the only thing is, and we have to figure out a way to do that, there is a spigot by that concession stand. If you could get that under, because when you drive over a car hose, you just wreck it. So if we could get it under,
Yeah, we could either put it under boards or something.
yeah,
you know,
just,
kind
and
of
you
water.
could just make it small.
There is like a 1-inch line pre-piped to the northwest corner of that concession stand,
Oh.
or to add
Just stubbed up.
sprinkler. It's just stubbed up right inside. It is to add, eventually be able to add sprinkler to the softball field.
Okay.
So there is
That
kind
would
of some,
actually work pretty well. It may not be a right of way thing, but we could connect right to that.
right,
When
it
is-
could come out and it could be part of eventually the
So you can
softball
make this
field
open zone
irrigation.
and everything.
When does the LACF grant due? Was it not
Yesterday.
August first? Okay.
Yesterday.
What I'm wondering is if you reach out to LACF representatives and request extension, sometimes they take a month or so to review their applications. They potentially would be interested, I can't speak for them, but just an idea, until it goes to council, if this board recommends,
Yeah.
it goes
Well, I
to
did-
council.
I honestly, I did start on this in April, and because of the COVID, we got pushed off, so if we could have gotten started right away, it would have, we could have done, but yes, I can definitely reach out and see what their thoughts are.
Do we have a motion to recommend to council for approval?
Yeah, we'll make
I
a
don't
motion
think
for recommend.
I mean, if you want to, I mean, I've made all these up, so basically, and then people have to sign that they understand the rules, so somebody can't come back and say, well, I didn't know we had to have our, because it never fails, somebody tries to grow pumpkins, and pumpkins go all over town. information.
Amy, you could maybe get a copy to Nate, and he could probably put it on board docs for city council to review prior to their meeting, so they can see those, if there's anything that they wanna change for the rules.
Yeah,
So we would need that Thursday by noon to get it on the agenda for the 10th.
I can just do it 2 in the morning.
And then if you want to go and review the space and just make sure that
Sure.
you're comfortable with that space before you bring it to council, I think that they would appreciate knowing the location ahead of time.
Sure. So should I look at what that street, what could have been a street, we're not gonna make it a street, that area, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, the spot south of the concessions, the new concession stand, I think at this point probably make the most sense.
Yeah, I just think water's important.
And I don't know, we could do water off of the hydrant over there on West Fourth, we've got one, but I'd prefer not to, we've got other options, so.
Yeah,
And space might be an issue there, but you get the grant, so.
Space out west Africa.
So any
It's a
other,
little bigger than that.
Any other discussion?
mean,
So
I-
we had a motion, oh, sorry. go
I
ahead,
think this
Jason.
is a better spot if possible. West Evergreen's also talked about being baseball fields or T-ball fields or practice spot because we're out of, I mean, there's just been a lot of talk
Volleyball's
there.
flying into the garden.
Well,
I could see that happening.
just
and
for a lot of
people
things
running
been
into-
talked about there for possibility. And then obviously the old football field, they talked about putting the different fields or, all this kind of stuff. But that little strip there, plus it's also secluded from everything, kind of, you don't
Right.
even know it's there, really.
right,
And that'd be, and then you could drive right up to it, water wouldn't be very hard, and,
well, even if you could just get the hose somewhat close,
I think you could just trench underneath the ground with
I
like
think
a
it would be
sprinkler line
simple.
or whatever, and come up right to that building and put a spigot there that gets drained at the end of the year, just like the concession stand does, or whatever it is, and that would probably be and it'd be kinda cool to have, actually.
Well, I've seen it in other communities, and it really does well. I know T does really well, and they even have, well, I don't know what their coffee hour now is, but if people have extra stuff, they just have a table of produce at their coffee hour at church. And a lot of the older people just maybe want one cucumber or 2 tomatoes or something. People learn to share if they have abundance, and it's nice that the old people, not even old people, I share tricks. And I know, like at the greenhouse, my specialty is more tree shrubs and perennials, but I have to be versed in garden and lawn too. So I can help troubleshoot a lot of people if they want help and help things started.
Thank you for your work on this project.
Yep.
And there was a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Say,
All in favor, say aye.
I,
Opposed, same sign.
Are we good?
Thank you, Amy. So we will move on to work session with coach-parent discussion. So I'd like to invite Tiffany, I assume that you're the lead representative, and one other lead representative is okay to come to the table.
Darren or Pat? What your arm wrestle for it?
So I'm just going to remind the audience that during the work session, those at the table are here to speak freely regarding the items on the agenda. If you are not on the agenda and in the audience, we ask that you please refrain from speaking out during the work session. So coach and parent discussion, we want to, Nate, did you have anything on this?
This was brought to me, and I think Justin, as well as the park board and a few, might have been the city council committee, park and recreation committee, has some concerns in 14U and 10U programs. So an email came to me from Ms. Butler, included coaches and parents, and just asked for more input. So I think, given the wide range of issues on that email, it makes sense to have a work session discussion on that tonight to try and figure out what some of those, how we can resolve some of those issues. So Tiffany, if you want to start off and just kind of go through some of your concerns or questions, we can try and answer those.
Sure. I think the first one on the list was, several parents have come to me and asked about registration fees and where the money goes. And they also emailed you, Nate. I know Justin, you received some emails as well, and I don't To my understanding, they've not been addressed or answered directly to those parents, so that would be the first one that I would have in regards to a breakdown of where their fees are going for the season.
So this will be for last season, not for 2020. So what you see here is for 2019, and the reason that it's 2019 is because 2020 isn't done yet. We haven't recouped all of our expenses for that yet. It's not closed out yet, so we didn't want to compare, we didn't want to look at this year's compared to last, instead of last year's, because it's a full season. So the big green that you see there is obviously the biggest one. That was concessions. That's where a lot of concession fees, not fees, the money for stocking concessions, for example.
So just to be clear, what we pay in fees goes to stock the concessions.
No, I should clarify. What you're seeing here is everything in what we call Fund 201. So there's a separate fund for park and recreation. We call this one 201 recreation programs.
Okay,
So within that, there's a variety of ways that revenue comes in, including fees, registration fees, including concessions. I don't know if we have anything else on there the last couple of years. Tournaments, thank you. And so on the expense side of that, we also have all of this. So there's no way to break down, well, this is what my registration fee covered, percent-wise, without including concessions on there. So the rest of that is really what is driven by the registration fees. So I don't have the percentages listed off on here, I can get them obviously. Insurance is a big one, that's about a quarter. Professional services and fees, that would be things along the lines of, if we need work done on a field, if we need, just think of this year, some of the lights aren't working, some of the field lights aren't working, we'll have to get them repaired. So that would come out of there, that could come out of there as well. Umpire contracts take up, I would say probably 10 to 15%. In the past, there was something called Parks and Recreation Administrator Contract. That's not really showing up on here, but it is in there as an expense. Now, in 2020, that won't be in there because it would be under salaries and wages for recreation specialists. So in the past, we've had an administrator for Parks and Rec in the summer. We didn't do that last year, but it was budgeted. Softball expense is the dark red there. Baseball expense is the dark blue. Concessions we've been over. Soccer expense is the purple, which you can really not see very well. Some fundraising expense, that's very little. What you would see there is if we had put aside money to raise funds for whatever project we might be working on. So we have, it's on the project budget for last year, even though it's not in the budgeted amount. And then they'll have some fee refunds on there as well. So instead of refunding on the revenue side, that's counted as an expense on the expense side.
so essentially, every registration for any parks and rec activity, whether it's soccer, softball, baseball, swimming pool, I don't know if that's,
Pool will be separate.
the pool is separate. So all of our registration fees go into one account, so then you just have revenues versus expenses. So my $140 registration for 14U doesn't necessarily go for repairs on the big baseball field. It just goes into the general account, and when a repair needs to be done, it's taken out of the Fund 201.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, and let me speak to this to some of the past, and we've talked about a little bit of where this fund goes and how it looks going forward. Nate has a little different opinion of it than what's happened in the past, and I agree with what, he's talking about. It's just, it hasn't been expressed to the parents, why it's good to do it here, but every single player fee, everything that's raised, everything that's been done since this started has all been in the 201 fund and never gone to anything but back into the program. And it didn't account for fixing a field. It didn't account for any maintenance on the field at all. What it did was it went back into our netting and batting cages. That was purchased all through the revenues that we raised. That new concession stand, maybe 40% of that was all from fees and from revenue from tournaments. Every single penny that's been in the 201 fund has gone back into the program for just program stuff.
Right.
So, in the future, I'm not 100% sure how Nate's gonna wanna run all that, but every single thing's gone back in. So there's not a lot of money that's made on the season, because the time you get uniforms,
And I can appreciate that, however, the last several years, we've not gotten new uniforms, new equipment. I mean, you saw in my email, new baseballs.
We ordered
I didn't
a
have
lot of
game balls.
baseballs this year, last year.
Well, I don't know where they
Ones
are,
last
because
year.
we had no game balls. So I think that's what
But
parents are
at what point was
seeing.
that communicated with the city that you didn't have any game balls?
The name got equipment.
Which night was that?
Well, I don't remember the date, but it was a coaches meeting. We left the coaches meeting, went over to the shed and got equipment, and there was a shortage of balls.
Okay.
I mean, Justin was there, Pat was there, Stefan was there.
We got half a box usually. This
I
year.
got zero. I got zero baseballs because by the time I got my equipment, it was gone.
Okay, and I guess, in my mind, if that's something that's happening at a game, at practice, at wherever, you just don't have enough balls. That's a quick call, like, we can have balls here.
So then that takes me to the other question is, who makes that call? Can I walk into Dobby's and say, hey, I need new shin guards because, so that's another problem. That was communicated back in February, Nate, on our conference call, where I said the catcher's equipment is not up to safety standards. Nothing was done by the time we started in June.
What do you mean by safety standards?
When they don't have straps to hold their chest or their shin guards on, the chest protector was held by a stapler. There's one screw in one of the batting helmet or the catcher's helmets that's not there and cannot be repaired. I said on that, Jeff Spieler said on that call as well, we need new catcher's equipment, and he was in charge of the equipment last year. Nothing was provided to us this year.
so the thing, in the past, obviously it's a COVID year, right? We're adjusting to
But
Justin
COVID,
getting
we
in.
can't blame COVID because
No,
we
but
still had the
Justin-
same amount of time to get stuff together,
Not
Jason.
necessarily, we had 2 weeks to try to pull everything together.
From February
We didn't
until
know,
June.
it was never approved until middle of May.
Middle of May.
So we were
They
moving
were
forward,
even having a
Tiffany,
season.
not having a season. It was planned that we were not going to have a season until 2 weeks before the season started. So we did from January, when we start normal years of getting things ready, to May, when the seasons kind of start, April, when they start practices, we did all of that in 2 weeks. So that was a very difficult time crunch of what are the most important things that we need this year so these kids can play baseball.
So what were those? What was identified as the most important things that people needed to play baseball this year?
Honestly, it was the match grant. So let's get back to the original thing, the 201 and the fees. There's money for that stuff. We bought it in the past. We bought new uniforms. We bought new hats this year. We bought new hats in the past. We bought equipment. Jeff Spieler bought whatever equipment he needed to get last year. So it's not a fun thing or an expense thing. It's somebody getting it done, and maybe an organization or how it's run or how we go about ordering that efficiently and
So
getting
what
that
is
to the
the
coaches.
plan moving forward for that organization? Because that, I don't want to point fingers and say it's Pat's fault, it's Justin's fault, it's Chris's fault. What's the plan for next year? We are in August. So let's go to Dobby's and get things on clearance. Let's go to Shields and get things on sale. What is the plan moving forward? We've got money sitting in the account. Who can do those things and what is the plan to do that? That's what I want to know here tonight, because I don't want to hear what we've done in the past or how it's always worked, because there's a group of parents here that aren't happy with how it happened. And I know COVID screwed everything up, but our season was still 6 weeks long. We still had a baseball season, and whether we had from February until June to get it done, it didn't get done.
We did not have it from February.
But we
this year.
still knew that the catcher's equipment, everything else wasn't up to par. We could use it next year. It would not have been a waste of money to get that stuff back in February, March, April, whatever it is.
So part of the discussion we had at that point back in May of do we order the equipment or do we not order the equipment was if we end up ordering the equipment and not having the seasons, we need to refund all those registration fees, which means that the fund balance then drops below a negative balance. And that's a problem. I mean, we can't have a
I
negative
understand
balance in
that.
a fund, period. We probably could have swung it somehow with a transfer, but that's not how we want to do our account. We don't want to take money from one
Completely
fund,
understand that.
just move it to another fund because it wasn't a wise decision. Yes, those are options, but even at this point in the year, it's not an option for us to do that because we have not budgeted that for this year. We have not budgeted for additional equipment. Now, if we have room, we can do that. But at this
So
point
that's
in the
a
year,
concern.
we still don't know.
If we're not budgeting for new equipment.
We
and-
budgeted for new equipment, we've already purchased it.
Where is it?
We've got new baseballs, we've got there's all kinds of stuff we purchased this year.
But where is it? And why do coaches not have access to that for their season?
I think every other coach has had access to balls.
I mean, I don't know that anybody
I got a
does.
bucket of balls when I first started, and it was maybe a quarter full, and I had to do it myself personally. And I got 6 game balls to start the 6th game.
But it's not just balls, it's shirts, it's other stuff that we're missing too, you know, and that's stuff that parents pay for.
I'm gonna have to ask for order in the audience, please. What I'm hearing is if there are issues on these teams, and I'm not saying that it should come straight to me, but we need to maybe identify a process of, I don't have equipment, or I don't have the proper equipment, or my catcher's gear is not safe. That then filters to Justin, and it's reviewed by the board. Yes, we're gonna spend these funds on this, this, and this. We talk about the past frequently because it brought us where we are right now. A lot of the things that I'm hearing, in the past for many years, we were running just this board, did all the work. Some of the coaches, yes, do put in work. But that's really the goal of Justin's position, is to be able to go in and do inventory. Can he recognize if something's not safe? And then go and purchase those items. So if something were to be missed this year, I guess I would have appreciated the board being notified. Like you said, you got 6 balls. Did you notify someone of that?
That was the number? I didn't even
We
know the
sat
number
with
came
Jason and Justin the night of 14U tryouts, and I know you mentioned it that night. I mean, I think you talk about process all the time, but again, I'm gonna challenge the board. Is this process written down and distributed to coaches and saying, Pat, if you have any complications during this season, this is your point of contact and that's how that needs to go? Because I've been coaching, I've been involved with Parks and Rec for 10 years, coaching for 6, I've never once gotten anything from this board that says, these are the rules for Parks and Rec. I've had multiple conversations, some heated, with Jason, and it's always the process, but if you're a brand new person coming in as a coach, you don't have anything to reference. There's nothing on the website that says Parks and Recreation Baseball rules. It refers us to VFW or to Prairie Grass League, which then there's some conflict because there are some differences in how we operate versus how Prairie Grass League operates or how VFW operates.
There, up until this year, there has been rules, and it's been in a Word document that says exactly what. Now, I'm not saying the process that says, okay, if you have an issue, go here. The process has been before. We have the baseball softball committee, which you've been on, right? So we've met, we've discussed that. A lot of times the work, because we haven't had an administrator, the idea behind it is we're trying to have an administrator so that this gets better and gets organized, because everything else is just purely volunteer. So there's only so much you can do as volunteers physically, right? So this whole thing from day one has always been volunteer. So we do the best we can, bring it to where it is. The baseball committee stepped in and helped. You helped last year with uniforms, Jeff did equipment. The idea, though, is we keep trying to do, I'm not saying it's been successful necessarily yet, but we're trying to get it away from the board and have it to a spot that the city's paying for, right? Which part of those fees go towards.
Absolutely,
So,
as they should.
so the idea behind it is not just because then our fees go there, it's because, one, it's less work for our board on a day in, day out. Do I have baseballs? Do I have umps? Do I have that? That in theory is supposed to go through this position. Our board is supposed to be there for above that, right? Or talking to coaches, maybe rule changes, different things like that, but not the day in, day out stuff. So, you know, we've tried it 3 times, you know what I mean? Or we've done that 3 times, and there's, the first year is always a problem, right? You know, I don't care if it was Chelsea, I don't care if it was Grant, and now Justin. there's a big transition to how much work has to be done and what the coaches expect and what they need. And you're right, it isn't documented, you know, because in reality, this is a free position that I spend all my time trying to get everything done. I'm not gonna sit here and document, you know what I mean?
No, but then you
know.
can't expect Justin to be successful.
Well,
Or anyone in that
Justin
position.
did have an email and a meeting with me and every single thing, and I
But
laid it out
that's
for him.
just you, and that's
Right.
how you want it to be run. So it has to be a board decision that says, okay, here's the things you should know about the Prairie, or the Lennox Parks and Recreation baseball program. And Justin is the point of contact, and Justin, anytime these things happen, this is your role, this is what comes to the board. Because if I come to you with a concern, you're gonna give me an answer. Hanson's gonna give me a different answer, Sean's gonna give me a completely different answer, and then I go to Nate, and he doesn't have the 3 same answers you guys have. So as a coach, Justin's in the mix of all of it, and they're just like, Justin, I don't know what to tell you, I don't know where to go, and Justin doesn't know how to answer the questions either. So it has to be a more formal process in order to be successful, otherwise next year, there will be someone different sitting in that chair, and we'll be right back here with a group of parents who have no idea if they want to invest in the program any longer. And I can't answer their questions. That's why I started to flood Justin, I started to flood Nate, because parents are coming to me, other coach, I can't answer the questions, because there's nothing that I can reference and say, yeah, right here, it says this is what you're supposed to do.
The
I
one
can't
thing
direct
I
them.
do wanna, you know, and I agree with you, I do agree with you,
So
and
then-
a formal plan and everything like that and all that stuff, it is definitely needed.
Absolutely, and
But-
I've given you guys drafts, I've given you a starting point, and I am not a person who's gonna sit here and toot my own horn, but we've gotta start somewhere, so let's start somewhere.
Right,
It's
the
written down,
thing is
what
that this
needs
is
to
our first
change
year
there.
we've had this board, full board and everything, like, and then having a guy or a guy, right?
Mhm.
So we can start stuff, we gotta get it going,
Perfect.
I agree.
I mean, last
But-
year.
But this year was kind of a,
Yeah, you can't take this whole
This
thing
year
and
was-
say,
a bunch
yeah.
of news, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And you also-
System,
Yep,
and you can't take this year and say, okay, hey, the whole thing, because last year, we didn't have one coach complaint, we didn't have one complaint hardly come back in any of our surveys, and we didn't have any issues. You know, it really comes down into putting the work in to make sure everybody's getting what they want. And yes,
well, I don't
documentation
think
would
everybody
make
has
it,
to get what they
well,
want.
or get what they need.
What they need,
Right.
And that document, right, that documentation, and I wish it was in place when Justin came in officially.
Make his life a lot
Because it'd make
easier.
his life a lot easier. But the, you know, it's, what we've done in the past is in place, it's just not on paper, right?
So
And that's what we
is
need
there
to
a
get.
plan? I mean, that's what I want, is there a plan to get it on paper so that when parents have a question, we have a place to refer to them and say, this is where you can answer those, like an FAQ on the
So-
website somewhere.
One of the things we talked about at our, it would have been a special meeting back in, I can't remember, it was June or July. You guys remember?
June.
Early, late June maybe. Was we had some situations come up, and we do cover some of it in our policies and procedures, which, again, I don't think we had any policies and procedures for Parks and Recreation until last fall. So nothing formally adopted by this board, or recommended by this board and adopted by the city council. It was clear at that meeting that we need more in those policies and procedures. And so I think, you know, more than likely this fall, I don't think it'll wait until next spring. We'll start undertaking that project to start looking at what do we really need to have, you know, encapsulated in softball policy and procedures, baseball, soccer, t-ball, and, you know, tournament trials, everything. And just lay it out there, and here's how the program works, here's how coaches are picked, here's how teams are picked, so on and so forth. So I think it sounds like a minor lift, that's a heavy lift.
Well, and
because
that's
there's a
need
lot.
though, that's the foundation of the program.
And so I would expect that sometime this winter we'll have an updated policy and procedure to use going into the next season, which really planning starts in late January or February, so.
I also think it's important to note that at our meeting with the city council, when we were trying to decide whether or not, you know, it was safe to have a season, what we should do, all of these concerns were brought up by the Park and Rec Board. But we were trying to do what was best for the kids in the community, giving them something to do because they hadn't had anything since March. All of these concerns were brought up and we, as a board, said, I don't know if we can pull this off. I don't know if this is enough time to do this. And we knew it was gonna be challenging, but we were trying to do what was best for the kids. So I do apologize. I mean, some of the safety stuff and the ball, none of that should have happened. But I know everybody thinks COVID is an excuse, but in our March meeting, in our April meeting, in our May meeting, we said there was gonna be no season. And then we had a special meeting at the end of May with the city council where it was decided. So then that gave us from that date until June 15th to try to figure all this out.
So I
And
think
so-
what needs to happen from an equipment standpoint, like softball, Justin and I are gonna talk about, we need to get the equipment back in, the jerseys back in, and do inventory, and make a list of what needs to be purchased next year. I assume, I don't know nothing about baseball. like
Same-
you do,
same
but
thing.
that should happen if it's not happening, whether it's documented or not.
Just check every day you get back.
Again, too, to kind of go off of what Kelsey said, just in addition to that, we launched a brand new website this year that was huge, that we put in a lot of volunteer hours to try to make it work. And then bringing Justin on board and going, providing him that orientation, but also transitioning to, most of us work full-time jobs, and so it's really difficult too, to be available 100% of the time to bring him up to speed. And so this whole year has been very challenging to where we're saying on the end of May that we're gonna move this season forward, and we gotta learn all of Sports Engine in 2 days to get people into practice after June 1st. So some of that added to those issues too. So my goal, and I think the goal of this board was, what are the minimum things? Like, let's get them on a field, let's give them a ball, let's let them just practice and play, and who cares if it's a scrimmage? And we also, we did push it out there to parents, like, this season is gonna look different. And I was very honest with people, it probably will be unorganized. We might not have everything we need. Are you still interested in your child playing baseball? And every parent had that opportunity to withdraw their registration at that time. We gave a 2-week window, I believe. So I just want to remind everybody of that we are, that's something that we're sensitive of. I don't want someone to feel like they're paying for something and they're not getting what they paid for. That's never our intent. But we were thinking of the kids, did your kids have fun this season? Or is this just parent issues? And I mean, not just parent issues, but are they suffering from these concerns?
I don't believe any of the kids are suffering because of these concerns. I do know that my 14U team wanted more, and I couldn't give them more. I mean, we had another open field tonight because I'm willing to work with them as long as I can, but they want more, they need more. Those 13-year-olds coming onto that big field, it's a huge, huge transition, and I had zero field availability to work with them on that. And so that's another concern on here is like, who has priority for what field, how to schedule, and I hope you have a better system in place for next year. I hope Sports Engine, everybody uses Sports Engine, so I think it's a great investment for the board to tackle. But Jason, you said that 13, 14 should have priority. And then it should go junior legion, senior legion, amateurs. So again,
There's probably plenty of field time on that field. I mean, there's a lot of.
sure, if I want to do practice at 11 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the end, I have a
No,
full-time
Tiffany, I
job
live
as
across the
well.
street from that park. It's open a lot of nights a week.
Not according to the schedule, Nate. So there's the other reason, I've been harassing you guys lately, saying, I checked out the field for this time at this date because I don't want the double booking, and I don't want to get, kicked off the field. So when I go on the calendar prior to this week, there hasn't been field availability. I think one of the Legion teams had the field checked out for an entire week, and then it turns out that their tournament wasn't even here that week.
Back to your policies and procedures, that has been handled differently in the past, not priority 13, 14, 17. I mean, I personally always kind of think they do because they're paying, but in the grand scheme, we've never treated it that way. What we've done is got them all in the same room, Legion, amateurs, junior Legion, got them all in the same room, and then worked out the field scheduling together so that everybody shared. There was no priority, there was no this, there was no that. everybody shared numbers so that they could work with coaches to do all this and adjust schedules when games change or rain outs. And really, it was that everybody wasn't to leave that area until they figured out a fair schedule for everybody to use the field. So back to policies and procedures, this is probably, I guess it's not your first year, 13 or 14.
Yes, it is.
But maybe
I've never
first year of
coached
coaching,
13 and
but maybe
14.
not coaching, but you had a son that's played that,
Last year.
Right.
Yep.
right? So.
But
so
I
that-
wouldn't know any of that backstory.
No, I know.
So,
Right.
even at the coaches meeting, it would have been great, hey, Stefan, you and Tiffany should contact Chad Riley, because he's in charge of the amateurs, or you guys should contact Maris Miller, whoever. That didn't happen. So,
No.
Stefan and I fumbled.
And honestly,
big
what
time.
works the best is just assigning nights. Like, that's how we
Absolutely, I
had it
agree
before.
100%
The
with
senior
you,
said
Chad.
this night, and that amateur was this night, and this was
Absolutely.
that night. But then whenever you have to remember though, that your games aren't scheduled by anyone else but you, and some other leagues are scheduled, like we play Sundays and Thursdays.
Mm-hmm.
So that's usually what we had.
But this
We
week, we
had
also had
Friday,
that
the
meeting.
juniors had
Right.
Saturday.
Yeah, the meetings
We had
never
2
happened.
weeks to go, and nobody knew who was playing.
Right.
Nobody knew if any amateurs were
Well,
playing.
but even
or
an
regional or
internal
anything.
meeting, just among the
Right, it
Lennox
should have
teams,
happened, I agree,
absolutely,
yes.
yeah.
The
There's so
first-
much going on,
The first night, luckily Maris was very nice, and he took a picture of his phone, which is scheduled, which had like 18 or 19 different days already scheduled and that was 25 minutes after I had accepted to be a coach. And he already had a field schedule for all that time. I scheduled one game, and I get an amateur team walking on back saying that they were supposed to start their game at 7, and I had my game start at 6. So things like that, like, does my game have to be over within an hour, right?
No,
Those types of rules, I had no clue. I'm trying to call people, I'm asking them,
I think, some of these things got dropped this year because of lots of reasons, right? Short time schedule, new coaches, bunch of different stuff. And I apologize, for anything part that I had in that. I obviously this year wasn't able to help like I normally am, so as well. So, I was really hands off, didn't do a lot, whatever. So I apologize for that. But I knew that going in too. I had a lot going on that we
But
tried to pull this
that's
off.
the perfect example, I mean,
Yeah.
you don't have a kid in this program anymore, so great example would be, here's everything you need to know to step into that program.
Right.
And we need to develop
Right.
that, and again, I'm happy to do whatever I can do, but we have to develop it, there has to be a plan, whether it starts in January, or it starts this fall, or whatever it is, that we can have more people interested in coaching, so we can have more people interested in coaching who know what they're doing and can provide that to the kids, that's huge. And if you start having people like Pat say, sorry, I have no interest in coaching anymore, you lose a huge asset because they don't want to do that program anymore. And you're gonna have a lot of people age out very soon, people who've been with this because they maybe are on their 3rd kid,
Well,
is
so-
now graduating 12 youth, and
Pat,
now,
last year versus this year, was last year a debacle?
Yeah, it was.
Okay, so
I
what?
had no idea what to do. I didn't have a kid in AU program.
Okay,
I came in, I stepped in as a 10U coach. I didn't know Jeff Portner. There was no process for me to find out Jeff Portner.
for
I was calling Chris and Tiffany. How do I schedule fields? Where's the schedule? How do I find the schedule for the field availability? There's no process for a new coach to come in and figure it out.
What about
Now,
during the
this year is
coaches
better because I
meeting?
knew what I was doing.
right, were you at the
But-
coaches meeting that we had last year?
No,
This is reviewed during the coaches meeting, so that's
Yeah.
part of it, is this year, a lot of those meetings were last minute thrown together, not everybody was able to attend. Those were
all
some
the
of those
coaches who were assigned
communications.
this year were at the coaches meeting.
So
Last
here's
year,
the
Pat-
other.
last year I was on
Text
vacation
message.
over the Kent.
And you got a text
And I got
message
10.
saying, hey, can you please coach, because we don't have enough people, I mean, you and I were scrambling to find another 10U coach last year.
So during
Which is
those
probably like
coaches
the
meetings,
sinful Part.
in the past, during those coaches meetings, it was a member of this board that ran that meeting, correct?
Yeah.
And you weren't available this year.
You just
I was
said that.
there, I just wasn't there, I guess is what I would say.
So a lot of these concerns are coming down to communication and the transition from our volunteer hours separately on pool and softball or t-ball and baseball and softball over here, and then filtering that into Justin, and then him having the answers to everything. And then when we're not available to be by his side for every single little question, And we like to answer them as soon as we can, because I don't wanna wait a month to come to the meeting and say, hey, as a board, what are we gonna do because Tiffany has not enough equipment or whatever it might be. So yes, the policies need to improve, but during these coaches meetings, that's part of Justin's new role, is to have that organization of, this is what we're gonna do, Justin's gonna go by himself to Prairie Grass, or he's gonna take Pat with, or whatever, and together you're gonna develop a schedule, and then he's gonna get it on Sports Engine. So part of the scheduling issue, that was communication on the part of, do we want coaches to schedule, do we want Justin to schedule? So when a coach goes in right now and tries to schedule themselves, it does not communicate with the master calendar. So I
It
think-
does, as long as you have the right tags.
So not everybody, if the tags are open, but not everybody has the correct access to be able, like if Kelsey goes and puts a T-ball game on the field, it's gonna show for her parents, but it's not gonna show for me logging in and seeing, hey, can I go on the T-ball field right now?
Sure it does.
So
If you have the right tags marked, it shows everything that is on the
it
schedule.
does not. It only, trust me, I've been on the phone with
We've
Sports
been through
Engine
a
about
sports
this.
engine.
It does not communicate.
I can
currently.
see everything that's scheduled on the T-ball
Is
field.
there a way to do it? No,
So this is
So-
something we're working
we do
on.
a separate one,
I think the answer to it is to have one person with rights on that calendar.
right?
I think, having external rights and go through that calendar, you're gonna have people scheduling over each other all the time.
So again, this is a process for next year, where last year, you could go in as a coach and put in your games, and it would say, hey, just a second, Pat's on the field at
Right.
this time.
Right.
It does not do that, or we don't understand the functionality of that yet, and we just haven't had time to, I haven't had time to learn that functionality. So going forward, it needs to be Justin's decision, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do all of it, and you at the coaches meeting need to give me your schedule, and I'm gonna put it on Sports Engine, and then there's not gonna be any overlap from that issue. So part of that is the communication and just pure time, that we didn't
And a
have.
strong recommendation I would have, and I agree with Chad Riley, that it should be designated nights. And I know that then Prairie Grass comes in and they schedule, but Jeff Portner is a super wonderful human being to work with. If you say, Jeff, we've got the Lennox ball field every Monday night for 10U and every Tuesday night for 12U, he'll make it work. I know.
That's how we used to do it with
He
them.
gets Monday
You
to
tell them that
Thursday.
nights work.
Monday
So-
through Thursday,
Right.
right. So
He
then.
gets every night to deal with.
Right, but if we just give him Monday night for 10U and Tuesday night for 12U, then we as coaches can still have, if I choose Monday, Thursday are my field nights, and I don't have a 10U game on Thursday night, I can have practice on the field on Thursday night. Then you don't have this scheduling over each other, and Chris knows he's got the field on Wednesday night, because that's another 12U night.
I think this goes back to your original, this just stuff needs to be done.
It does, it absolutely
And I
needs to be
think-
documented.
It would be so nice, when I get to 14U, coaching, how do you even turn the lights on? Can you put something down so you know how to turn the lights on?
You flip two switches.
Well, I understand
They're
that.
over on some pole on the side.
They're lighted in a big metal box and they say lights on it, then you just flick it and they come on.
Well, I still think, and I'm with you, I've been there, same with the keys to the crow's nest, the keys to the concession stand,
Can you get the door?
right, the idea behind this whole thing
Order,
in the
please,
first place.
Chad.
The thing has always been, we've done everything, tried to just get through the season, right? With a position, the thought is, we can now document, we can now do stuff in the off season, we could order things and different stuff. So that's the goal of the board, is to have somebody that's able to do a lot of this work that needs to be done, right? To document, to put this into place. It's pretty easy for me to say, okay, hey Tiffany, our committee's gonna meet and we're gonna discuss what we wanna change or what some things or whatever, that comes to the board, we discuss it. But then the work to carry it all out has always been the hardest part, right? The decision's easy, but that's what the idea behind the position is to document it. So we've had all sorts of things this year, maybe they've happened in the past, maybe they haven't, maybe they came to light this year because of COVID, right? So, and Nate brought up policy and procedure, just because I had it in a Word document that used to always be on the website until this year, isn't a policy and a procedure. It's a Word document on a website. So he's trying to help us bring this into not only just, okay, hey, this is what we've done in the past, but there's actually a way to go and make this an actual policy and procedure. So, I mean, I hope you guys have a little patience with some of us trying to do this as volunteers as well, but we're on the same path. I mean, that's what path we want. We're not like, oh, hey, this is awesome, this is what we want it to be. We want it to be that path. One, it makes our job easier, right?
Right.
You know, and it makes, because for us to go tell every coach everything that has to happen and to make sure, and then their schedules and all that kind of stuff, it makes everybody's life better if this is documented. So hopefully, and then we talked about that in our July meeting or whatever, that this has to happen, because if rules come up, can't be, well, he said, or in the past, it's gotta be there. So that's a big focus for us going forward, is to, by next year, is to have that, you know, in place. It won't be perfect next year, but the nice thing, you can build upon it, right? Like, where are the keys, or where are the lights? I mean,
Well, or
maybe
you
that's
can
missed,
determine,
but.
you know what, that really didn't work, so now we need to change it, because
Right.
that worked for nobody.
Right.
But at least we have a foundation, a starting point. Again, this is my recommendation, my preference as a parent, also as a volunteer, that needs to be sent out with registration. That, I mean, that has to be very, very clear. What am I registering my son or my daughter, or, you know, what am I registering them for, and what can I expect throughout the season? Because I think that's, I don't want to speak for parents, but I think that's kind of where they're at right now, is that they need to see something, they they can hold in their hands and say, okay, yes, I'm willing to invest in this program and register my son or my daughter for this program again for the 2021
Can you be more
season.
specific, Tiffany, of what, I'm not trying to be
No, so when
picky, I did have
when I go online and I register my son for flag football, everything is there. The rules, the
Policies and
schedules, the
procedures.
policies,
Okay.
all of that is, Big Stu basketball is the same way. These are the rules, these are the dates, this is everything that you can expect. I just think that when I click on registration, because I think that some things could have been avoided this year, had that been explained during registration. If we're referred to VFW and we're referred to Prairie Grass, they allow certain things that Parks and Rec haven't always allowed. And so that could have been avoided from the very beginning, if it was right there and I could see, Tiffany, you can't do this. Well, it doesn't say that, so I'm gonna register, so playing up, yeah, that's the elephant in the room there. If my kid can't play up, it's not clear on registration that he can't play up.
It's a brand new website for one.
I know, but
And
that's
it
why
also
it's
says,
so
It
right
does
in there,
say
it
they
says
have
you
to
can't
be
play up.
in this grade.
Then tell me how it gets through registration that they do.
So
Sign up.
it can't code it where the birthday purposely spits you into the right category. But it does say, if you're registering for 8U, your child must have been born in 2011 and 2012.
That's great, isn't it?
And then, for baseball specifically, it says, and I might be saying the wrong grades for the age, but first and second grade, but cannot be a kindergartner. Maybe a fourth grader playing down, but cannot be a kindergartner. And it says that in the initial, when you go to registration. So it's not on the website, but it's on the registration website. There's two different websites.
Right, but when you click on Prairie Grass at VFW, it says that you can, as long as you fall below these ages, you can play.
So that's something for a future policy if we want to match those policies, but our program, as it sat this year, said that specifically in registration.
So then, again,
I didn't know ours pointed to the VFW or to Prairie Grass.
sure,
Our website points to them for rules.
yep, yep. And I'm assuming because we participate in Prairie Grass League and we do the state tournament, which makes sense. You gotta follow their rules if you're gonna be in
Yeah,
their
but we
league.
don't, you know, I don't wanna make this long, but from a VFW standpoint or something like that, we've got the same rules we've always had. Now, I'm not saying they get followed all the time or whatever else, but once again, back to your documentation and follow through, right? So, yes,
Well,
we
and
get all
follow
these
through across the
registrations,
board.
right, but we get these registrations, we got 2 weeks to try to pull off the season. Brand new administrator, brand new website, and now we're also supposed to go in and verify everybody's birthday and age, you know what I mean? So it's never been okay, I'm not saying.
But it was okay for someone this year, but it wasn't okay for others this year. That's the other
This-
piece that has to be
It should never be
across the board.
okay, and we did have a meeting on it, and because of all the circumstances with the year and everything else,
We
it was
approved
just
that.
to get through this year and to try to, it's our fault for not having it on there the right way, right? Or catching it earlier, or doing
Well, and
whatever.
then having it on both websites so that, you know, if you're trying to go register and you go to lennoxparkandrec.com, you should be able to see those policies. And so again, that was building the website and making sure that all of that was in there and communicated across was again, all my that was a lot of volunteer hours just to, website management is not my forte. And so some of that stuff maybe got missed on the Parks and Rec website because I was focused on trying to push out that registration.
Yep, so going back to your question,
Yes.
that's what I mean, is at registration, I think all of that should be available. Again, so parents know specifically what they're registering their son or their daughter for.
Sure.
Because if I want Justin to play up because he's very, very skilled, I need to know at registration that this program's not gonna allow me to do that. So maybe I need to look for a different program that would allow me to do that. So I think that has to be made
Well,
very, very
the
clear.
one thing too though, Tiffany, I mean, if you didn't know that that's not possible, then I would say that you didn't read the registration. Probably like 95% of people don't when they
We
go in
do
to
have
register.
screenshots of the
Because in
registration.
years past, it said it right there, so I've gone through
Which is
it.
fine.
But I'm saying, so for it to be a blind thing that nobody
But why
knows.
did one pick it to do it this year but another didn't?
It-
Right,
I
and
don't
that's-
see anything on our, and Justin, if you can search from the admin side, I don't see anything about prairie grass or VFW in our program
It-
description.
Right, because it never has in the past, and it shouldn't.
And
You
I
know?
don't know where that is, and I'm not saying it's not there, but I don't remember that pulling over, but it was a copy and paste for a lot of it. So, if it is there, I don't know where it says that, I guess.
I mean, the thing that we have to do, like I said, policies and procedures, right? I hope that this year, we can not sit here and nitpick every single thing that happened this year, per se, because this year has been
Chaos.
chaos, right? I knew that going in when we talked about the council, and the council saying we want to have a baseball season. I'm like, ah, man, this is not gonna be good. Even Nate said that, Justin said that. The idea was that, hey, something's better than nothing, let's do it. But this is what you get when you put something instead of nothing, right? Especially if in the past you haven't had all these procedures written out like they should have been probably
Right,
5 years
right.
ago. Except if you're putting in a new website, plus you're grabbing new coaches, you know what I mean? I would hope that this year isn't the representation of what you think the program is or has been or will be, right? So this is a year that it's been a mess.
And again,
To say it lightly.
I think if we do start that process of documentation, policies, procedures, rules, whatever it is, I think you'll clean up a lot of what concerns have been brought to my attention and I've shared with you guys.
And I absolutely agree with, going back to some things in the past with, if we had policies and procedures specifically documented for Park and Rec, and had a link to that on the website. I know there's some here, but it's choppy, and so that does need improvement, and we are aware of that, and that's something where we're planning to work on that this fall. We're trying to get through the season, but we do appreciate the concerns because we don't know sometimes what's
Right.
wrong when we're not out there on the field with you, or sometimes we might miss ages because when we've got 400 kids and I'm looking at a spreadsheet of 400 kids and going through one by one to make sure they wrote male or female properly and are they registered for softball or baseball, because that's a lot of what we're doing is fixing some of that. And then also checking the birth date, do they fall within the birth date? So that was probably missed because of
And
me.
is the information on there right?
Yeah.
Because you don't even know if they put it in there wrong.
So they do
So,
put the wrong
So
birth
then you're
dates
gonna have to,
too.
how are you gonna find out if it's even in there wrong?
Right.
So, but once again, it needs to be more published. It needs to be out there with ramifications of whatever it is. For coaches coming in, because it is different. I mean, we didn't even know if there was gonna be a prairie grass, right, league. That happened, this year, I just hope that, the program's more than this year. And we've gotta get, and that's where Justin's hopefully our path into more documentation and more organized. But this year is kind of I don't make any excuses. I'm not gonna say it went good, right? I'm not gonna say that everything went smooth and, but understand, we also have a brand new pool trying to open up, you know what I mean? And that's coming in late, and Justin's doing that. Maybe we got Justin too much stuff he's gotta do, for
Well,
his
and again, I think if
job
it's
site.
documented, then Justin has something to refer back to. I mean,
Right.
again, I'm a firm believer that if it's on paper, then you can say, well, Kelsey, you were responsible for this and you didn't do it, so how can we make this better going forward? I mean, that's that's administration 101, you know? Because right now, I mean, and I asked you point blank, what do you want to be involved with? Because I had directed things towards Justin.
Right.
So we do need to know that, because if Chris is gonna be in charge of X, Y, and Z, then we know I contact Chris anytime X, Y, and Z happens. So again, that, you know, cheat sheet to brand new coaches to say, this is how you turn the lights on the big field, this is how you do the scoreboard. I mean, that would be very beneficial.
I want to clarify, so I said something about a date of birth. I wasn't implying that anybody that we've discussed previously has lied about a date, just sometimes parents put their own birth date. And so those are.
Their own
Right.
shirt size.
Their own shirt
T-ball, and
size.
it's an
And
extra
so
large.
going through, just going through
Yeah.
400 and changing all of
I've done
that,
that,
contacting them.
because people used to want different colored jerseys, right, for T-ball and all this stuff, so then all of a sudden you've got a medium thing and the kid's this big,
Yeah.
because they put their own shirt size on there.
And I'm hopeful the new
You know.
website will clean it up, because
Yeah.
our registration process isn't user-friendly. And I'm a pretty tech-savvy person, and it's not very user-friendly, so I'm hoping that it will.
But
be
Sports
cleaned up.
Engine should be, right?
Sports Engine is super easy to use. I mean, again, I use it for multiple other sports.
And registration
Kids.
goes through there
Yeah.
too.
I
So
think
it in
the,
theory should be like that at
Yeah.
some point.
the parent and coach view is significantly more user-friendly than the behind-the-scenes view that Justin has to deal with. And so just having patience on that whole process. But I just want to reiterate our sincerest thanks for all the coaches that have put time and effort, and I know a lot of them have helped this board to get through a lot of things, so, and parent involvement as well too. I know that we're all here to get the kids playing. That's really the goal. And so we welcome these concerns, and I think now it's our job to work and move forward with policies and procedures and specifically written documentation of what can improve. It won't be perfect next year, but we can sit down again next year and what went well, what do we need to change? And hopefully, we aren't dealing with COVID, and hopefully Justin is able to, you know, move forward with some of those processes as well. So kind of what I'm hearing is that, you know, we have these concerns on the table. It's something that we need to address and move forward with. And I don't think that there's any action that needs to be taken, but is there any additional discussion on the work session?
Can I add something?
Yes.
First of all, I think the board made the right decision on having baseball this year. For sure. Thank you guys for doing that. Because the kids would have gone bonkers without baseball. That's the closest we got. Life is normal. So thank you guys for that. I do a lot of things in the hockey. So you can go to Sioux Falls Youth Hockey, and we got all the policies and boards. We have subcommittees that just deal with new players. We have committees that deal with new coaches, and we have programs, and all that kind of stuff. So you can steal all that stuff from us from Sioux Falls Youth Hockey. But I go with Tiffany said. I think, you know, just sitting back and hearing all this, we've got the same thing with hockey. Hockey's about $1,000 a year per player. This is 140, so you try to take this about 10 times more because you're dealing with 600 some kids that pay for, you know, hockey's an expensive sport. That's just to play $1,000, then you got to buy about $500-600 worth of gear a year, and they go out of it, and so it's people are really invested in hockey. So this is a lot of what I hear. But I think the number one thing that I hear is communication. I think if the communication's there, I think everybody's trying to do the right thing. I think you guys made the right decision. Thank you for having baseball this year. It wasn't great, I agree. Nothing is COVID, I guess. I got a stupid mask in my hand. The one thing I wanted to bring up though, a couple of years, I helped Tiffany coach, and I was there's a 10U, the 12U baseball field, the pitching mound. It's like a sunken deal down there. Can we get that fixed? And who do I talk to get that fixed?
Yes.
I've offered in the past to pay for, like a plywood with green fake grass on it or whatever, so that they have a consistent pitching mound there. I didn't put one on both sides, so the kids can warm up doing that, so we just have that consistency there. And I know I'm on first base, coaching with Tiffany, and I'm always getting crap going. You guys always pitch out of the hole there? Like, no.
Is that on our parks walkthrough
Yeah, it
list?
was on our, because we redid that field a few years back, and we did it on the cheap, right, but we did it still helped, but we reset those bases and the thing, and it sunk, you know, and, to me, if there's any help you can, I mean, I'm not saying pay for it, because I think we have the money that we want to pay for it, But what we really need most of the time is volunteers and somebody that has initiative to get it done. You know, there's things with those batting cages, there's a extra set of pitching mound and catching that we'd like to do on the old football field to have a full practice. Anybody has time and volunteers and ideas and wants to get some things done, one, we can help you get people to help, but it's just somebody that has the initiative to say, okay, let's fix this. That's really what it comes down to. We are strictly pretty much all volunteers, you know what I mean? We've got one guy that's
So
somewhat.
Justin's the only one guy that's paid out of this whole thing.
Yes, right, so.
And he oversees like the whole Parks and Rec for the whole city of Lennox.
And the pool.
The tennis court, I mean, everything.
So we have to understand that we're still a small town that's really mostly volunteers, and we've come a long way doing it. So I think if there's things that somebody's willing to help with and has an idea, come to our board, come to our committees, come to whatever, and we'll try to help facilitate that. That's how everything else has gotten done here, right? That
Yeah,
concession
maybe we can have
stand.
a baseball subcommittee or something that's in charge of some of that stuff that we can help out and volunteer and get some of that stuff that we've been frustrated over the few years with, but.
Thank you. I appreciate you bringing that to our attention too. And I know it is something that I think we've noticed and again, adding it to the list of things that we do need to address. So Justin, you could put that on our parks walkthrough list as something that we need to utilize some of those discretionary funds
And
for.
that's Dave Heibold.
Your lead project.
Contact information.
We're fine with that.
A little bit pitching mound and really a lot of names.
Lead project manager.
Yeah,
There you
That's
go.
why I said, which model was this?
It's on the middle
Middle
field.
Middle field.
That's what we
By
looked at
Park
last
Drive.
spring.
Yeah, it sunk after we redid that field,
Yeah.
and that really helped with water, but it just never
Okay.
got really set right.
So I think we're done with the work session kind of discussion, and I just want to thank you guys again for, I know you put a lot of time and hours, and again, we're here for the kids, and so thank you for your commitment, and we appreciate your patience too as we work through the transition. And so I'm glad that we were able to sit down and have this conversation, to get some of this out there and do something about it instead of just talking about it, so thank you.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate being able to be here and have this conversation. I think that the next step then maybe, I don't know how you do this, I assume you should be able to click a button, but that might be a bad assumption. To maybe send something to all the parents who participated this year and saying those words and say, thank you for your patience through the chaos that has been COVID and the unpredictability, and because it goes a long way.
Absolutely.
Because I don't think parents hear that near enough, and it's the frustration, like, where's my money going? I'm not seeing anything, I don't know what's going on. So if there's a select all to send that out, then I think that would go a long way with parents as
I
well.
think that
Absolutely.
can easily be conveyed when we send out our surveys for the end of the year. And just make clear, yeah, we know this was a challenging year, what specifically.
Yep. And maybe even the highlights of, these are our hopes for the next few months, we want to work on
Yep.
getting some things done.
And while we're discussing surveys, just with some parents in the room, if you could be descriptive on things that we need to improve on, we appreciate that feedback. It's different getting a survey that says this year was terrible versus getting a survey of this is why this year was not productive, or this is why I did not care for this year. Here are my things that if they were improved, I would come back next year. That would be helpful for us to have that information.
I think that's why we're here, is that we just don't want to pitch and have, we're just, and have you guys try to come up with a solution. I think Tiffany's brought some good solutions, she's got a rough draft there. I'll help out with the baseball mound, and stuff like that, so I think we just want to help. And we want the program to get better. We want the kids to retain the program, the kids are having fun, but they can definitely have more fun.
And I'm here, my husband and I are here in support of Tiffany and Pat and Stefan, and I don't know any other coaches sitting in this room, but if without them, our kids don't play, because I don't know anything about baseball, and so-and-so doesn't know anything about soccer, we need them. And to make their job the easiest, we need to do some of the stuff that they've complained about and brought forward, because that's the only way it's gonna make it better. We can all go to Sioux Falls, and we can all go to TD, and we can all, go to Harrisburg, but we chose to keep our kids here. And so we want the best program for them here, and so we don't have to go elsewhere. We want the programs here to succeed.
Thank you, I appreciate that, and I think we are all on the same page that we're here for the kids, we want them to have a good season, and absolutely, we want to be able to facilitate and give the coaches the resources that they need to have a successful season, so thank you. So that concludes the work session, thank you Tiffany and Pat. So we're gonna move on to new park board member recommendation.
Yes, we actually have 3 seats that we have vacancies to fill here. Going to emails this afternoon, they have back. I will just let it clear out before.
Maybe I should say, maybe they want to.
He said there's
For every game,
spots.
never wants to be back with this. We all feel tired. I don't know.
So there are 3 spots to fill on the park board. We knew Bobby Joe went, is leaving. Tina Buda and Cassie Watson emailed me late last week and also announced her intent to leave the board. So we have 3 vacancies. I think we'll just open it up to the park board to discuss what recommendations, if any, you want to make to the mayor for those spots.
I think we just need to put something in the paper and have a public look at it and get some volunteers that way. I mean,
I need to know what it involves, I think, to just the commitment that it takes and the volunteer hours and.
Almost like a job application kind of thing or whatever, posting kind of thing, but
have them write a couple paragraphs on why they want to do it.
That's
We do
very, very
have
easy.
we do have some names that are interested, but that, I think that's a separate discussion. Do we want a policy for bringing forward? I'm sorry it always comes down to a policy, but if it were written, then we would know what to do right now instead of, oh, my friend, you know, sort of Sean, if he has a friend that wants to join the board and we know nothing about that person, I think it is valuable to have a process.
Yeah, and it can't be, you know, us just handpicking our friends. I mean, if I pick the next 3 board members, I don't not pick, but recommend them, then we all have the same thought process and same ideas. There's no development.
well, and the other thing too is we want to try to figure out, like, for example, if Tina's leaving, right, and Cassie, that's the major soccer people.
Yeah.
So like, when
Both of them have said, and I ran into Tina this afternoon, and she said too, just because I'm not going to be on the park board doesn't mean I won't be involved in soccer
right.
or able to be a resource for soccer yet, so.
So like the council, right, so you're elected to the city council and then you come in and then you get committee assignments, you know what I mean? I'm not sure how that all works, but how we've done here, we've kind of recruited somebody that really has because it's, you know, a volunteer type thing, right? Recruited somebody that has a passion for whatever it is. That way, when they're doing all this extra work, they at least like to do it, you know? So that's the only thing I have sometimes with you know, in theory, our subcommittees still always had a board member in the subcommittee, because then that committee can bring all that information, it comes up through that park and rec board member to the board. So I don't know how we go about selecting it, but at this point, we're really short on soccer, obviously. And we can't have necessarily, you know, I don't know, I'm not sure how to make it work, but it's best when you have some people that, hey, you're into the pool, you're into soccer, you're into baseball, softball, or whatever, because then when you're giving your volunteer time, it's at least something you enjoy.
I honestly think that's good because somebody who just came in, I felt like I was a useless part of the board for the first year I was on, because I had no assignment. No, I'm like, well, geez, we should get somebody else on this board who will do it.
I agree
So
with
I
that, for
think
the
that-
first 6 months I sat here,
so I think
I'm
it's
not bringing any value to this because I'm not a part of these specific.
So the
On the
only,
show.
But I think it's nice
The only
to,
re-
when
go ahead,
they come in to like say, hey, this is what you're assigned to.
orientation kind of.
Yeah,
And that I don't think would be a challenge at all. We do that for anybody that's coming onto the council new. You know, there's an orientation kind of packet we put together with not just the ordinances and regulations, but kind of the background for here's what we're working on right now, here's what's the big target, so on and so forth. So the only requirements that we have for appointments to the park board is that it's done at the first regular meeting of the city council in September of each year. So We
When
do
is that
have time,
meeting?
so it would be.
The 8th.
September 14. So we do have time between now and then to do something like that. There's no requirement that the park board give a recommendation or go through that process, it's simply that the mayor makes the appointment, so.
And I'd like to say, I mean, I'm not a sports person or a art person, so if you can give me a list of names that you're interested in, and I mean, I'd much rather do that than just throw a dart at the board.
Sure.
So what are our options if we wanted to do,
We
we
could-
wanted to do a process and have it ready for Mayor Duchesne by September 14th?
I would suggest, Justin and I can get an ad out yet this week in the paper for the next 2 weeks. It wouldn't take much to put an application together. And just select from the current board members, a group of people that would be willing to either interview or discuss with them what it is and go from there.
Can we put an emphasis on something in the, like, application, like soccer, or what, you know, what I mean, if we need, because right now, where's all that stuff, where's Clint?
He's going to.
He's not gone, like, but Clint's kind of softball, Sean's softball, we're baseball, you're helping with baseball, you're helping with t-ball in the pool, you're part of the pool. So, I mean, I just don't know, I don't think we have any soccer representation now. And
Can you just say something that they will oversee and
Well,
assist with?
well-rounded, I don't know.
I think just saying something like this position will will oversee some of the soccer processes or soccer development, maybe not development's not the right word, but organization of the soccer seasons.
Be beneficial with some knowledge of the soccer program.
I don't know if we'll get anybody though if we say that, because I think most of our soccer coaches are not experts in soccer.
Oh, God,
I don't know
none
if
of them.
any of them are. So I don't think we can say that they've had experience in soccer, but just that it says somewhere in the application that you're going to be working with soccer. That will be.
or maybe honestly, you could just say, hey, we're looking at
Not with your hand.
somebody's got it, you know, one key position, we're looking for somebody that has a passion for soccer, right? It has nothing to do with experience.
Passion for
that's,
soccer.
You know, a passion to help with the program. Because, you know, it is a little different on this particular board, because it's strictly volunteer. If you want somebody to do anything, they better want to do it, you know what I mean? You can't necessarily, you know what I mean, or have a kid in it, or gone through it, you know, something to fix, some sort of thing.
You wanna try and throw together a quick application questionnaire, and I'll get it advertised.
Because I wasn't planning on zoning and Worthing, and that's how I found out about it, it was in the paper. I was like,
Oh, really?
it sounds kind of interesting.
Was it?
I got nothing
Yeah.
better to do.
So can we, so to communicate,
$15 a meeting though.
so there were like 3 people that were interested, just the process for communicating with them.
Who
Yeah, I
were
think
those?
So the 4th was not they didn't show interest, it was us
A
saying
suggestion.
that would be
Yeah.
a good person
So
to
who-
pursue.
Just someone I thought is a decent human being.
Who were those 4 people, that are 3 people, or whatever?
So Aaron Riley,
Boomgarden.
Kelly Boomgarden, and
Amy.
Was there 3?
yeah, there were 3,
Yeah.
because there were 4 total.
And
And the
then
4th
you-
one was the one you recommended,
Who'd you recommend?
Paula Lilly.
I can't
Oh,
remember.
Paul.
But there were 3,
Norla.
Who did you say? Aaron, Kelly,
I don't know the 3rd one, I think Nate has it. Maybe not.
It was, Amy Fisher, who did the community
Okay,
garden.
Amy Fisher, okay. So just, if we do put it in the paper, I would just like some communication to go out to those individuals that, and that can be me, because they reached out, some of them reached out to me, I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
Just so they're aware of our process, so we didn't just say, it's not that we don't think you're qualified, we just wanna have a
Opening up the
process.
field.
Right.
Yeah.
And then with that, board member recommendations, so are we gonna talk about appointments and
I think even
committee
some,
positions and that kind of thing.
I mean, even some of our policies and procedures, we should probably review those in one of these meetings, because I mean, like our contract term, you know what I mean, or.
I've never looked at it. So you're up on 3-year terms. I don't think any of you are up this year. There might be one person, but we're not telling him who's up.
Wait,
It's set in.
I'm up, you know, I'm free.
It's not until last night was the deadline.
I didn't say it was you.
Well, I just think that, you know, this whole thing that we've dealt with this year and policies and procedures, and Nate, you've done it so much, but the city is doing the same thing, makes a heck of a lot of sense here, because we've done stuff a lot in the past and just got through it, and we've tried to do the best we can, and we've tried to have people that like different focuses, so that they give time in there, and then we have subcommittees, whether it be the pool, with Laura, and everybody who's got up through here now, so the idea is, but we also don't have anything written down, you know, it's always just been something that, you know, we've just done, and once again, it should, in theory, people should know how it works because we've done it the same, but if it's not written down, apparently people don't. You know what I
And I
mean?
think that it's just clear cut.
For you, for us.
Do you think, yeah, then we're all saying the same thing?
But the other thing too is, the other thing with this particular, most of the time, it's not like, hey, we have 4 applicants and pick the one. Usually we're hustling.
Right. Trying
To get anybody, right? You know, we're like, hey, will you do this? Will you do this? I think everybody on this board has been like, hey, will you do this? Sort of thing. So,
So you're not up. Your term is officially unknown.
yeah, that's the thing. But apparently, somebody should have wrote that down. Yeah.
Somebody should have.
If we wrote that down, then I don't know, yeah.
And I'll be honest, I've gone through minutes for 20 years of minutes probably, and I don't think I've ever seen where you were originally appointed.
We were appointed at the same time,
Were you really?
by Warble, and I mean Foxborough.
Well, actually, you were first. I went on when Wolf went out. You were original.
Was
And
I
Wolf
before?
went to
No, I wasn't
council.
on the original.
So it was 6 years ago.
I was on with Robinson, Wolf, and
Yeah.
you. But you and I came on right around the same time. Warble appointed you.
So maybe I'm not even on this board. Maybe I was just
showing up
sitting here for no reason.
You got all kinds of time on your
Apparently.
hands, so why don't you just come?
But I do think, you know.
Everything we have written down, the better off we are.
Yes, yes.
That's just,
And I think with just how you've already done it with the council and with Justin being there to hopefully do some of these things behind the scenes, we just gotta get it.
We can give him something to look at.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, because if
Only
he was
make your
walking.
life
through the-
easier.
Right, right.
I also think the way we do things can be relooked at too.
Especially if we wrote them down. We
Yeah.
knew exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, geez,
We're
the
all
first
old.
year, I was like, Jason, what did you used to do for this? What did you used to do for that? What do people normally do for this? And he's just, I might as well just do it, because she keeps asking me.
No, it's been just trying to get it done, and
Right.
now we're at that point where it really should be more documented. It's not, shouldn't be in. what
Also,
we've
if
done
it's in the
past,
paper,
right?
maybe some of these parents that were here would want to
I
be
think
part
I
of
should
the
stick
board
around for
that's.
this
Yeah.
conversation.
Possible. So with that appointment of, I don't know, do we need to have, I mean, we need a new secretary. Do we need, when is the chair position and is there
I don't think you
I
do
don't know
that
what all
until
the-
after the appointment is made. Let me check one
a,
more.
so then we do secretary and co-chair,
Boy,
treasurer.
did anybody write anything down tonight?
I thought,
It's on YouTube, so I hope that covers it.
Well, that's, Cassie was very good about, writing all that down and committing all those notes too, so.
so here, there's a bit of a conflict here that I think we need to clean up in our ordinance. At the first regular meeting of the park board in September, the board shall elect from its members a chairman, vice chairman, and secretary, who serve until the first regular meeting of the board in August the following year. So, I think that should be cleaned up. I don't think that organizational meeting should happen until the mayor's, appointment is made at the first meeting of the city council in September, so. It's a simple change, I don't think, I wouldn't recommend picking your chairman, vice chairman, or secretary from a new member, just because it takes some time to acclimate to the board. But according to the ordinances, we should do that in August. Again, there's a lot of things we sure it won't hurt to not do it one more time.
So that's something we need to do tonight then?
I wouldn't recommend doing it at this point, I would do it at the next meeting.
Okay.
So anything else for new park board member recommendation? You guys are gonna get an ad out into the paper. Do we need to vote on that?
No, I don't think we do.
So then we'll review, or we can have interviews then, or whatever, a meeting before the next meeting, we'll make our recommendation.
We'll either have a special meeting or have a small group of park board members.
It's not bad timing for this because, you know, the season's starting.
Yeah, things are starting.
If it's not till December, it's not
Can
gonna.
we just, instead of doing like interviews, and I might be overstepping here, if you guys wanna do interviews, that's fine. But can we just put it in the application process? What is your volunteer history? What have you done as a volunteer? Why are you interested in joining this board? Can you commit to volunteer time in addition to coming to the meeting one Sunday a month? And then,
We just
do you have
review them?
experience in
Yeah,
soccer
it's a-
programs?
Yeah,
And
it's the short
just
essay.
add like some of those, and it could be an essay or it could just be open boxes that they have to describe and answer those 4 questions.
I think that's relatively simple.
And then that way we can just review them and make an answer instead of scheduling an interview
Yeah.
for a volunteer position.
I mean, in theory, we should have that information prior to our next meeting, though, right?
Correct, like,
So
or
that's-
So somehow we'll have it prior to
Yeah.
review
just an
it.
email review them and then.
We may even be able to do this on Survey Monkey like we do with a few other things, and just be able to provide reports with things on, so.
Cause we
And I would-
we
I
can't
would-
decide it over email, can we?
Yes, we could meet over email, but I
Okay,
strongly discourage it.
okay, so that's a no.
It's a strongly discouraged. It's not a no.
It's not a no. There's a chance.
There's a chance.
Okay, so we will move on to next year's budget.
Thank you. One of the requirements of the park board, in addition to providing a report on the conditions of the of parks in general, is to recommend a budget every year to the city council. So we're just starting to get into that budget now on the staff side, and what I'm presenting to you here tonight is what I am suggesting you recommend to the city council for the Parks and Recreation budget next year. Before I go into the details here, I want to point out a couple of things. So what you have in front of you are several different departments. What you have is several different accounts within several different departments within several different funds. So I want to break that down just a little bit. So the first one you see is Recreation Administration. That's in the general fund. That's where we put a lot of our miscellaneous recreational needs. Justin salaries in there, all the stuff that has to do with that. The park, the discretionary project for the softball field this year, that would be in there, those kinds of things. The next one down is parks. That's also in the general fund. So that's where you're gonna see your groundskeepers be paid out of. A lot of our repairs and maintenance on fields and facilities, a lot of that is done out there as well as utilities. Next you have Fund 201, Parks and Recreation. And you have in that one, you have 2 different sides. You have the revenue side, and then you have the expense side. So you'll see in there your different fees, income, contributions and donations, and then under that you'll have all of your recreation administration expenses. So that's all the program expenses we were talking about earlier. And then you have Fund 614, that's the swimming pool fund. And that'll have the registration fees, all the other stuff on there, as well as the expenses for that. That does not include, in 2021, the principal and interest obligation that we have on the loan for the pool. So that's taken care of on our liability side of the general balance sheet in our accounting system. So if I can just go through each of these departments, we'll just go from there. If you have any questions or suggestions, we can just change it as we go along. So on the Recreation Administration, you'll see 1/4 of Justin's salary allocated there. Beyond that, not a ton of change from our 2020 recommended budget. In fact, I think the only other thing I changed on here would have been machinery and equipment, which I doubled the budget for that next year from 1,000 to 2,000. So to make room for some additional needs that I think we have when it comes to some of our equipment. On the parks budget, so that's the next section down. Again, 1/4 of Justin's salary is allocated there. You know, I just realized we need to add to that, that's only taking into account his salary, not the groundskeepers. So that'll be an adjustment that we make in our first budget we present to the city council. The workers' comp, that'll actually go up. We anticipate that going up for a few years into the future, just based on past history. That's really nothing that this board can control, it's just something we have to pay. So, and given that specific role, the risk of injury tends to be higher, so. Rentals, I increased from 1,500 to 4,500. Some of that was based on this year. You'll see we spent through mid-July $3,785 on rentals this year. I think there's probably some things that needed to be coded differently. Probably should have gone to one of the other funds, but some of it is stuff that we just simply couldn't control this year. On repairs and maintenance, that actually went down just a little bit. You know, what we had put a lot of that money in there for this year was those basketball hoops. That was about $2,000 right there. So that'll already be taken care of. Outside of that, not a ton of changes. Utilities did go up, as did, no, utilities stayed the same, or not utilities, machinery and equipment stayed the same for that department. In Fund 201, not a lot of change there. You know, I think this year's concession fees, I didn't want to go based off of that. We didn't have a ton of concessions this year. It was hard to find volunteers. It just didn't go as well as we had hoped. And a lot of that concession revenue is driven by the tournaments we have to. Last year we had the big Legion tournament in August, and that brought in a lot of revenue into that department. We don't know if we have those things or not next year until later. So we plan for not having them. If we get them, that's just simply icing on top of the cake, so to speak. Softball player fees, we actually upped that in revenue amount for next year based on this year's registrations. We've grown consistently over the past 3 or 4 years. Gate fees, did not budget anything there, or in fundraising. Contributions and donations, we typically budget around $1,000 for that, just in case we do get a small grant. And then other charges, I didn't even budget for that this year.
So then, the other thing, the contributions and donations, we'll wanna put, you know, I don't know what we've done this year, if we've done anything, but, you know, if companies advertise on our Park and Rec website in those spots, we've charged them $150 a year to do this. That's where some of that contributions and donations. So when we do our player registration fees, we have, are you willing to sponsor, you know, that sort of thing. We have to follow up with them, get them a packet, whatever it is, get their logo and follow through and get that money.
Yep.
Because it's free money, basically. And a lot of people in the past have volunteered to do that, but we never follow up and never get the money. So that's probably why we're.
How about when you, does it just go in the player fee when you pay the extra $25 to not do concession?
That's included in the player.
Okay.
Yeah. On the expense side, again, 25% adjusted, salary will be in there, as well as FICA, Medicare, retirement insurance, those kinds of things. Professional services and fees actually decreased the budget for that next year. We didn't use much of that this year, if any. I think we have by now in that category, but through mid-July we hadn't. Umpire contract will stay about the same. The other category, I'd like to keep that around 1,000. Just, we don't like to put anything in that category because it's fairly unaccounted for in that case. concessions stayed the same for next year, same for baseball expense, softball expense, and soccer expense. Fee refund, we kept right at 500, just like we did this year. Overall, in that department, with that revenue and those expenses, you'd see a net gain of $2,530, which is pretty consistent with past history.
That's the 201 fund.
Joel, yeah.
So that's kind of a income and expense report for the 201.
Swimming pool,
What happens to the 3322?
yourself.
I'm just curious,
To
is
the
that,
excess?
yeah, does that
Oh, okay.
add into like the discretionary? I don't need specifics, I'm just curious, because it doesn't roll over anymore, right?
You have, so Fund 201 has its own fund balance, so whatever's in there at the end of the year carries over to the next year.
It does carry over?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So that
And you
fund,
use that as discretionary, the discretionary
You can.
budget, that's where that 12,000,
no. That was
that's from
actually
the
general.
city,
Right.
from general.
That's kind of that's where they will talk about their player fees and all their effort, concessions and tournaments,
Yep.
that money. So, in our procedures, we should clarify that as well, what that can
Yeah.
be used for, or what it's to be used for. I know we have what we've done in the past, right, and what we told people, we should just clarify what that 201
But
fund.
we can get far more detailed. I mean, at 14U, I had it broken down a little bit more because we did it differently last year. We can provide, even on the parent survey, here's a breakdown of what your funds, what your fees go to. That would not be difficult at all.
Well, I think just the 201 fund, if in theory, nothing that the parents volunteer for or pay or anything is in any other park and rec thing other than the 201.
Correct.
Right. So if we just say the 201 fund balance is X and can be used for X, whatever our policies are, then reality, who cares which team or which, you know what I mean? It's the reality of all their efforts. Most of it comes down to me, when we have a tournament that brings in $8,000 for that weekend, it only brings in $8,000 because there's about 30 parents that are busting their butt
Right.
for 4 days to get it done. So they'd like that money to go to their own team, but we've never done that. It's always gone to the 201 fund with the idea that it goes back into the program, right? It goes back into like the
Whether it's equipment or buildings or.
yeah, something that goes back towards their contribution towards that thing. So I think we should just clarify in our documents, 201 is for X. You know.
201's for everything, right?
Yeah, but I
It's
mean,
for
just,
basketball hoops, it's for,
well,
Anything park and rec.
but see, but that's a question to me,
Because
because
there's also a
So-
rec budget.
Yeah, the
In
like
the
basketball hoops, tennis courts, ladybug painting.
Yeah.
That would all come out of general,
right.
not out of 201.
Well, because in theory, because we don't have a basketball league here, right, that people are parents, all we really have that they're contributing and doing it all is for baseball, softball, and soccer. So in theory, I think it kind of goes back into those programs, because that's where it was raised from, right? But then again, it can be expanded if we want to say, other things that have to
tennis
do,
courts
or basketball, I mean, I don't know, I want to make sure that it's clarified
Yeah,
for what we've done in the past and what that money can go to, so people
right.
know where their money's going.
And that's part of the reason we did the discretionary project, because it was broader than 201 would allow.
Right.
We can do that stuff in 201, but it should really be facility improvements for those programs. So t-ball, softball, baseball,
Right.
soccer. When you're talking about improvements to the basketball court, or the tennis court, or skate park, any of those things, you're really talking about, a separate fund, and you need a way to set aside money in the general fund somehow to get those projects done. And the only avenue available to you is through the budget.
And that's year to year, so there's no, we could
There's
say,
no fund balance for you to use.
we could save up in the baseball, softball program for 3 years to buy X, but you really can't do that with any other thing, because it's a general fund and it rolls back in.
Not really, no. I mean, we carry a general fund reserve.
And that's where you put it and allocate it or whatever.
Right. But if we were, I mean, if I'm being honest, the only time I would recommend going into that reserve is for an absolutely necessary project, and
Basketballs aren't that.
that's not gonna meet that criteria. You know, I'm talking, whether we need emergency repairs to something or those kinds of things. Okay. Swimming pool. This is still a hard one to nail down. I do think we're going to end this year far better than we had planned. So if you remember last year, we had budgeted to transfer in operating funds from another fund. It's called our third penny fund. Basically, when you buy hotel beds, alcohol, those kinds of things, touristy stuff, then it goes into the third penny. That's not a ton of money in our town. We don't sell a ton of those things. We don't sell any hotel rooms, for example. But it does carry a balance, and it does allow us to transfer it for recreational purposes. So that's how we were going to make a break even for the pool for this year. In terms of just fee and concession revenue, we're already at, I think, $55,000 this year, which is well over what we were supposed to get. I think we were supposed to get 49, if I remember right, in revenue. So if we're open for another 3 weeks, we're still gonna, I would like to see us hit 60 if possible. So we may still have to transfer in, but we also are trying to nail down expenses for this year, and it's a weird year. We hired more staff, we had extra staff. So we're still trying to learn from this year. I think it'll be 2022 before we have a really solid pool budget. This one still has us bringing in fees based off of this year's expenses, actual expenses. So it's still a bit of a guess. Now that being said, it doesn't budget a transfer in from any other fund. Because I think if we can make this math work, we actually may have a way to fund this pool without transferring in much, if anything. So, again, the major expenses are gonna come on salaries and wages. I think the biggest change outside of that from this year's budget on the expense side is utilities. We were, when we first opened, first talked about getting the heater with Carruthers, we were expecting utility bills somewhere around, I think, $10,000 from the summer. And our first bill for heating the pool was, I think, $650. So, that's great news, and there have been days where it's been far warmer than it really needed to be.
Today wasn't.
No, today was cold.
Today was cold.
So this still has us netting a little over $3,000 in the pool next year. Again, whatever you net in that department goes back and stays in that pool reserve. It's a new pool. We will need major repairs at some point with it. This fall, if we have the funding available, we would still like to bump out that fence on by the diving boards and either fill that with concrete or grass, one of the two, and hopefully make that.
And then is it this fund that, like, if we wanted to purchase more chairs for next year or anything like that, that
Correct.
comes out of here?
Yep. And that's mostly figured in as well.
Okay.
So, I think we do need more chairs. I'm surprised at how well it went with the amount we had this summer, but I think, at least doubling what we've got would help tremendously. But I don't know that we can do that without bumping out that.
Yeah, right.
We
It's not
just don't have a
space.
ton of space.
No, it's tacked all on fences and everywhere else in there.
So, as far as the grass around the pool, that's all gonna be reseeded again free of charge this fall. They got washed out with, I think it was a 3-inch rain just a few days after. So that'll get reseeded. I think it's gonna be mulched as well this time. But I did express my desire that they hold off until we had a chance to bump that out. It will take some dirt work to get that done, so.
What is the cost to bump that out, and where
We don't
does
know yet.
that come from?
It would more than likely come from its own pool fund.
Okay, because there's still some funds left, correct? I mean, we need to purchase, in the
In
donation.
the fund
So I'm
balance,
just,
yes.
with, after we do, which I know is coming up on the agenda, but after that and the sound system and stuff is all paid for.
Yeah, I'd have to look at what we still have available.
Just
but
curious,
it's
because
at
we
least
could
a
do
few
that
thousand.
and maybe the chairs. I don't know if we could do both, but
Yeah.
funding for that, so.
We will find a way to, I think, be able to do some of that this year and some of it next year.
Anything else for the budget?
I would add that this is all a recommendation, it will change. I mean, I would say 2 weeks from now, we'll have a much better feel for where things are at. But until then, the budget changes multiple times every day, from here on out until the first meeting in September for the city council, so.
And it's mostly our discretionary fund that changes, right? That, did you budgeted $10,000?
There's another 10, I think 12 is what we put in there. Yeah.
That's usually the one
10,
that gets axed or gets affected.
That was the easy one.
That's the one, yeah, that's the one they go after first. So, but
Yep.
the last year, I mean, you didn't, so we'll see how everything comes out.
But
Any
it
other?
looks like we made almost 20 grand on the programs, but not all the expenses right now. There's only $370 for umpires.
Yeah, you're gonna see a lot of those expenses in July, so that'll impact those numbers significantly.
Maybe got 20 grand now.
No, it's just the 3322 is what will be left over.
I'm talking about year to date this year.
Oh, sorry, okay.
That's all.
Any other discussions on the budget for 2021? Do I have a motion to recommend approval from the council?
Second.
Okay.
Who got a second? Here.
Sean,
Me.
Okay.
all in favor, say aye.
Hi.
All opposed, same sign. Justin, do you have anything for soccer? I know registration's open right
It's
now.
open right now. So far, we have 20 registrants.
When's the deadline again? I was trying
I
to
think
look
it's
it up.
next week. so-
August 9th
Yeah.
is the deadline.
Oh, jeez. I better
Do
sign up.
you, well, you did just send that out again, didn't you?
What's that?
I saw it somewhere, did it just get sent out again? I was just thinking to do additional
Reminder to-
communication before August
Yeah,
9th,
I
maybe
can-
this week.
I can send out an
I did it
announcement.
Just
go
a
out last
reminder.
year or last week or something.
And
I don't know if it's on
What's the
Facebook.
audience for that announcement? Is it just previous players or is there
I
something
can do it
to?
to, existing registrants in Sports Engine. So if they've had a prior registration.
for
it
any
goes to-
sport,
It goes to every sport.
Okay.
Yeah, like, the total is, I think, 550 members.
Is there anything in the paper?
no, what's up?
I'm just thinking of,
Or send some of the.
you know, I wonder if the school would send it out.
Paper and the email.
So the school has changed their processes just to not inundate parents with emails. So I don't know what they do in the summer. But you could reach out to Don Timmerman or Bridget Jackson. And it would just be first name dot last name at the school's URL, what is it? Lennox dot, yeah.
I've got Don's email address.
'Cause I mean,
And,
that's.
or, yeah, Don Timmerman, or there's a few others that would be able to answer that, you know,
They
what
would
are our
only
options?
send
Yeah,
it K two,
I
right?
think that would be.
True, it would just need to go to K2, people going into kindergarten through second. Because they might be able to help too. I'm just thinking of new parents coming into town,
Yeah.
they're not on our sports engine, and so really that's the population we're meeting. And unless they go to our city's website, they're not seeing it.
Yeah. Well, last
And
month
20 is
we
low
too.
for registrations, that's low.
I know there's a.
School reach is our number one avenue for almost any registrations.
I don't know that we did it last year, did we?
We should have. I
So-
think we've done it every.
When I sent
probably
it to
not.
them, but it was, they told me at that time that their policies were changing, and they did send it out, but it was kind of met with resistance that this is not really something,
Okay.
because there's just too many emails if they send out every single, unsanctioned sport,
Can
and
there
event,
be
and that
anything
kind of
that
stuff.
pictured it?
I don't know, maybe,
Just like
because they
a,
do have sports there, like they have
are
a
they doing
little-
this year? I didn't know with how registration
True.
changed. I just sent it on an email. I didn't know.
So normally summer sign up too, and I know you were planning to go to that, is to sit at summer sign up and have something there. Tuesday is picture day, so if they don't wanna send out an email, you could ask, is there a flyer I could put somewhere? Or are you gonna have an athlete or a sports table, where they could look at something there? Just so we're at least covering our bases.
Okay.
So moving on to pool project donor signs, so really, we kind of have discussed the pool a little bit already, but I have 2 proposals for the donor sign, and I sent those to Nate so that you guys could see them, and I'd like a little feedback. So one of the designs is from our city engineer, and it's actually cheaper than
You want that one first?
the local representative, yes. I like both designs, but then also I think there's value in shopping local, but it would be more expensive. So I just wanted to bring it to the board and kind of discuss it a little bit. So the local individual is Randy Williamson, and he, we'll talk about this one first, sorry. This is Stockwell's. So this is, I think they have 2 designs, didn't they?
Downloading about 8 different things here. This one?
Yeah, so this, I think, is the one that was more attractive, I guess, but it would be vinyl. And then I don't think you can see the price on there, but I think it was around $3,600 if you minimize it, $3,525 installed. So this would just go on the wall, on the north wall coming in, like when you're gonna walk into the pool. That was, so we talked about maybe putting it on the south wall, like inside the pool fence, but then the concern there was if someone donated and maybe they're not at the pool, just to be able to drive up or walk up and look at the sponsor wall and not have to be inside the fence or inside the pool, and it's kind of a nice welcome sign. So this is the one, and it would list all the names just kind of in the little bubble wherever they designated to whatever amount that they donated.
So that's supposed to like look like a wave or something?
Yes.
That's. Yeah.
So,
Catch the wave.
yeah, the way that I assume it will be is that these will just be vinyl, just right onto the wall. There's not gonna be any kind of backing,
Well,
that it'll just be these on the wall.
You can't go vinyl with all that brick that's on there.
No, it'll be
Well,
it's
no,
aluminum with a
Yeah,
painted
aluminum.
finish.
Yeah.
So it would be something holding it, it's not just gonna be sticking it to the wall.
Right, that's what I'm talking about.
Double-sided tape.
I was like,
Yeah.
I could do that. You put it for $100.
That's, it's not more expensive. So this is the other one, I didn't think it was as aesthetically pleasing, but, that's again why I'm looking for your guys' input.
Is that the colors or? I mean, is that-
Yes, so in my opinion, I really like Randy Williams' design. His isn't on here yet, but his is a little more expensive, but we would be shopping local then too. So this is Randy Williams.
Which one did you, yeah?
So the one that I liked the most is the top middle. The freestanding one on the bottom left would be difficult to, where do we put that? And that was more expensive too. So the top middle, and I think in his text, when he sent the message, it says the pricing. So the bottom right would be on the inside of the pool house. The top right would be on the inside of the deck, and then the top middle would be on the outside front facing north, which I thought looked the best. It has a nice welcome to Lennox pool sign with all the donors, and I did give him some inspiration of kind of what I wanted to see. So this is very close to what I had rendered and had sent to him, but I think he did a really nice job of.
So this might be a really dumb question.
Yeah.
So this thing here, that's by the city pool, is this big on the wall and that thing by the Lennox city pool in there, like both ways?
What do you mean?
Like, is this a bigger picture representing what's up in there, this thing?
I think that's the whole, I guess, part of exactly what it's going to look like. It's exactly what it looks
Because
like.
I think that should be taken out.
The
What
Lennox City
should be
pool?
taken?
No, just the little swirl between
Oh.
city and pool.
Yeah.
Oh,
read
I
about
see what you're
pool.
saying.
Yeah, that thing was funny.
Like, I
So
think it would look
he-
more clean if it just said
Yeah.
Lennox city pool and then
I see what
that
you're
thing.
saying, okay.
I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure
Just-
the
just
bottom
be
thing was
clear.
a blown up picture of what the little wave
Oh,
meant.
I see what you're saying,
Don't get it
okay.
magnified glass.
We're clear, that everybody knows that's a wave.
You
But
guys,
I think it would look cleaner without that extra.
It's like a teardrop.
it's, now you're gonna go design something and bring it back.
No, I'm not.
See what it looks like.
Shouldn't say anything, it looks wonderful.
That's
This
why.
this looks almost identical to what I told him I wanted, so.
He
Perfect.
does good work.
It's perfect.
Yeah, that would just be my only
Yeah, and
recommendation.
I think that's a great recommendation, and I think he was trying to give us like our own logo for the pool, and so I think that's where that came from, but I'm sure he could easily remove the little wave.
I think it's nice to have some scenic signage there too. Everybody knows it's the pool, but there's
Yeah,
nothing
it's
on
a-
that wall,
right.
so.
Well, we got a sign there now.
No, we took it down because the hours had changed, but, I mean, I initially was meant to have something there.
Nate, can you zoom out to the, so, I thought maybe that bottom left one was more of a, so we could just go traditional where he has these colors, but it's just a column list. That's another option too, where it wouldn't be the unique design. It would be more of a traditional, just a couple column format with people listed.
Is there room to add on? People don't even know.
Yeah, so I did ask him that, and he said that we could add on in the future if needed.
So what is the price of this one versus the other one?
If you go back to my email, it should say in there. I think it was right at 5,000, 4,000.
D was 4,000.
So 4,000 versus, what was the other, 24?
The one that was more of a unique was 3,550.
Okay.
But that didn't have the Lennox City pool.
It did not have the Lennox
There's a
City
little
pool
extra in there.
This
Right.
comes with a logo for the pool.
Yeah, so that was part of this was logo and the sign, so he could take, if we wanted it cheaper, take the logo out. There's enough money in the fund to cover this.
And this comes from that fund, right?
It does, this would come from the donations.
So
So I mean, we can get bigger and better, but then you're asking these people who donated money to
spend it
have
on their own name.
30%
Right.
of it go towards the signage.
Right.
So it was kind of, the cheapest option was to put it on the wall instead of having it out in the landscape, which can get upwards of 30 grand is what Stockwell quoted. To have a freestanding
Yeah,
brick
that's pricey.
structure.
I like it on the building.
Yeah, so, what do you guys think of the different design? I'm honestly open to discussion, I can take criticism, so,
Can you?
sometimes.
Yeah.
That was my only, I
Yeah.
thought it would look cleaner, but
Yes, I
I
like
get why they have it for the logo, but
Yeah, I like
So
that too.
can we see the other one from Stockwell again? And you're only talking $1,500, right? I mean, difference.
No, $450.
Oh, $450?
Yeah.
Well, then why don't you go with the one you want?
Because I don't wanna make this decision on my own, Jason, because that gets us in trouble.
No.
We just talked
You've
about
done all
this.
the work, you did that for $450 and it stays though.
I like local, I mean, for that amount different,
Yeah.
it's nice to.
And
What's the difference? I gotta
It's $9, yeah.
Yeah.
And we got our name on there, so, yeah, I liked it.
I agree.
Are we pulling it back up?
I'm trying, but it's just.
And that's fine, I thought it was more than.
I feel like the font on the.
I actually thought it was more like 1,500, I forgot it was only 4,000.
Right, that's what I, yeah.
Yeah. But I think he can get it installed. So just as some examples, he did the sign to the north, that says Lennox. And he did the Red Barn sign, that big red sign.
Can he do West Evergreen then for $3,000 less?
Well, the freestanding sign, she said was 30 grand.
His freestanding sign is a lot cheaper.
Yeah, he could do, kind of a plan is to have,
Oh.
I think Randy could do that one, just because it's,
Yeah.
it's close by too, so.
Yeah.
Stockwell quoted 30, because they were gonna put like, it was gonna be embedded into like landscape.
Busy.
And have a big,
He was
like
pretty
brick
great.
structure that was, what I sent them was maybe very glamorous, and I didn't know what that stuff was, so. Then that, it was just a quick, like, you're probably looking at this,
I liked, I'm good to vote on it, I mean, I liked.
Yeah.
the
well, I don't know
second
if we have to vote, I
trying
respect
to-
your
trying to help you.
decision, Jason,
Trying to
and
help you move
your
past this,
input,
and I don't
and I
wanna
just
make a
wanna
decision,
know.
but I think it looks good.
Well, which one?
Second one. One you
The
like.
one, the middle one.
Just do whatever you want.
Option B, when you like to.
B as in dog.
Okay, and you want it on the wall, not
Yes.
freestanding, okay,
Before we move off the pool,
yes.
I just have a suggestion that at break, can we have one lifeguard out there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Has that been discussed before?
Yeah.
Okay, but it,
It sounds like it's not happening.
They weren't
oh,
out-
no,
they weren't out
I
there
was
today.
just there, and it's not happening. No, I thought it had been talked about, because they're not out there.
No, it's,
And
So you
they're,
send it by text message, maybe they'll.
they.
I was just thinking, I'll text
Snapchat.
every break.
They've
Someone out there.
there've been kids in the pool during the last two times, well, I was there with Mayor Duchesne, and there was kids in the pool
Okay.
during break.
I just would feel better if we at least had one lifeguard out there during break to.
You always used to.
Keep order.
Even if they're swimming.
Yeah.
So since
Well,
we're
there's
kinda
how many of them?
talking about the rules there too, I think,
You
I
want a
know
policy?
that, well, yes, I would like to develop a policy, someone else to develop a policy. I'm concerned about the high dive and the safety of it. Because we just let any
Oh,
age
or size.
go up there, so my 4-year-old could walk up this ladder that's as tall as some houses by herself and freak out and decide to turn around and go down the ladder and fall 9 feet onto the concrete.
You do a height thing?
Yeah.
I just, and I'm not saying we have to do it this year, but I think that there's value in pursuing or looking
So-
at a policy of what do other towns do.
When we were in Sioux City, they had a policy that if you're going to go off of the diving boards, you had to do a swim test. And you had to demonstrate your swimming ability. And there are certain times that you would be able to do that, and then you would be on kind of a list. Hard to keep track of, though.
I know that, I think something's gonna happen. Watching those kids go backwards down that ladder, it happens every day that I'm there.
Okay.
Not every day, but every day that I'm there. They're gonna slip, it's wet, and
Just put a sign.
maybe it's just I'm overprotective, I don't know.
No, turning
I
back,
feel
we
like-
had no turning back.
Just let your
And Ella's
4-year-old
gonna
climb
listen
up
to
that. Put your 4-year-old off that ladder. Throw the parent.
There was a 4-year-old who sent me that.
I don't do it.
Same with,
So we could, I think, number one, have a sign.
yeah.
But yeah, I think having a guard out there monitoring who's going on.
Just like third question.
I also like one more question about like the poo refund, you know, when they poop and they're giving refunds back. I heard people aren't getting it if they use their card or something.
Well, it should be. We get an email every time they do.
Okay.
Oh,
For like the day pass.
That's what I call it, poo refunds.
If somebody's not getting this,
For
they'll
the
have.
poo every time, same kid.
No.
That's
Sometimes
confidential,
it's,
it's confidential.
Oh.
if somebody's not getting their refund, just have them call down here.
Okay.
We'll look into it.
Do season pass holders get a refund?
They do not.
$0.0033.
Here's your order.
You're gonna have to take that to the council, Jeff.
$3,000 surplus.
Poo refund.
Okay.
Okay, anything else on the pool? So I don't think we need to vote on the sign name, that was just, I needed input, thank you.
Do you want me to reach out to Randy, or do you want to talk to him?
I can talk to him,
Okay.
that's fine. Okay, so anything for baseball?
I think we talked
We
about.
covered,
We're split money, but we should.
Yeah, I think that's all for a different, when we're going over policies, or
Yeah.
my things that I would have for Pete for.
is there anything we need to do right now or talk about for baseball, softball, t-ball?
Well, baseball season should be over for everybody now, right? Or is there still an age group going?
Yeah, the AU and the t-ball.
We play tomorrow night, then we're done, I think.
And, but there is a process where you collect the equipment to do a count and check it, right?
So, yeah, we had to, like at our last game, we had to turn jerseys in before you could leave the field, which was great on Pat's part.
Yeah, I had a hell of a time doing that.
I did that.
Yeah, well, wear a tank top underneath.
Yeah,
Like Pat
I just
said,
sent an email saying, bring a shirt with.
yep, that's what Pat did too.
so for 8U though, just to clarify,
Are you taking?
are we for 8U, I'm sorry, I can't talk, are we collecting jerseys?
No.
AU gets.
AU and
So we
T-ball
don't
too.
need to do any collection for the teams that are still playing, so we need
Except
to
for
do
equipment.
collection. Okay, so for equipment,
like the balls and the bags and the,
Yeah, equipment.
yeah.
And I think the 10 and 12U jerseys, the gray ones from last year, I think older girls can just keep those this year too. Start over next year. Because we only got about half of them back last year, so.
So we just need a process for that to communicate to the coaches.
Yep.
So if you wanna, draft something, Justin, so all of softball,
That's gotta get back to our procedures, because everybody's done, that we collect the jerseys for.
I know, but did they get collected for baseball?
They're
We
not
just
back
gotta
here
do
yet.
inventory,
I'm missing before, because we had the tournament team thing when we collected them, we still had a tournament. So I told
Did
them.
Tiffany
I
help
thought we
with
might
that
get it
last year?
so I think
Spieler
we get to
helped.
keep them.
Spieler helped with
Right,
it.
but-
The equipment though, not the jerseys, right?
The equipment, yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to get it all back.
So just, I guess, communicating with the T-ball and AU coaches, I think there's value in just saying they get to keep their jerseys. I don't know that the coaches know that. And so then are they trying to collect them because they coach for an older team? And then just ensuring, maybe setting up a time for equipment return, which they go, I don't know when the end of the season is, Chad, do you know?
2 weeks,
Yeah,
Or you would know, sorry.
August,
Okay.
like that.
You're done.
Yeah, Dave, do we gotta play, speaking, I can ask a question, do we have to play, like, we've already played a couple of those T-ball teams once or twice, do we gotta play those games?
I think it was, the idea was to get the parents' money's worth. Was-
Well, and are the parents already planning on those games? We don't wanna cancel them at this point.
Let's do it, Chad.
I had, one person show up for practice.
You're welcome.
Yes, thanks.
Is it a communication
No,
issue?
Dave.
But we do need,
back home.
we do need to get back all those jerseys and all that uniform, because that's what causes our expenses to go way up. Is
Are they
that the
new
longer
for
it goes
jerseys?
on, the less
They've
you
been there
have.
every 2 years. I think they've had it like 4.
Oh, yeah, so that's something that we'll talk about this fall, is,
Yeah, it'd be a-
we're, so a night,
They're not
like a
bad
big
shape.
inventory needs
Yeah,
to happen.
They're good with that, what, like the
The
baseball
baseball.
uniforms.
They were new. I gotta find out from Denise when. She's saying we never got, it was,
Well, my kids have always had them, so it's literally 3 years old.
No,
This
we
is
just,
third.
we would just buy the same design.
We just
over
buy
and
the
over
same
again.
designs
Oh,
and then,
And
yeah.
you maybe buy 50 or 100
Oh,
shirts a
there's
year,
something
and
else.
just,
well,
softball
we had
and
a
t-ball
whole new
team.
design and everything. This might be the third year of that design.
Yeah.
Design,
is that the property of Lennox baseball shirts or whatever?
It's the one that came from Dakota Sports versus Dobby's, because the last one came from Dobby's and this one came from Dakota Sports. But I know that it wasn't, about every 3 years,
change them a little bit or something.
yeah, well, these have held up better than the other ones. The other ones, they rubbed on the fence and they all pulled
Yeah,
out.
they're not bad shape.
But still,
Flat back tire or what?
we need an inventory to know, Justin, we gotta get them all back, and then we gotta know what condition they're in. You know, are they in good shape to be used?
And how many you have?
And yeah, and we should have enough.
I think
We
one
should
for
have
every kid.
fees for people who don't. Insurance,
Oh,
but-
absolutely.
Did Tiffany ever get
You
a
could
bunch
be
from
in charge of
everybody
that.
that you were bringing?
Okay, got it.
What was that?
I think Tiffany was collecting them. She had an email a while ago.
Yeah, she said she was collecting. I don't know
Oh, no,
if
she
we've received
did.
anybody's equipment yet, though.
So if you just wanna follow
That was
up
all
on
been
that,
done.
Justin, and then do
Yeah, we-
some inventory, doesn't need to be urgent, but inventory probably within, I don't know, the next month or two.
Well, if you don't do it soon, you'll never get them.
Well, making sure they're here, but I mean
Yeah.
checking the condition and stuff.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
going through to see what we need to order, doesn't need to happen right now, but making sure you got everything back should happen soon. So anything else for baseball or softball? Can we move through that, Sean?
Yeah, I was just gonna have Justin send something out for equipment and jersey tournament, that's all I have for softball. We could probably do it this Wednesday, I don't know if that's kinda short notice, but, there's a men's league, I don't play, so I'll be up there.
Anything for T-ball?
Yes, the lock on the T-ball shed's just gone.
It's gone.
Yeah, the chain's busted, the lock's gone.
But it did get painted.
Tanner T. Needs another coat, our nice tea in there still.
Kind of.
It did get painted.
Some spots it needs something on metal or.
Yeah, there's still a good
wasn't-
tea over there.
Yeah, I think somebody had it for practice last Wednesday though, so I didn't have it for the game, but, we have 2 weeks left is all, so that's good. And then the only other complaint that I've had is that enough uniforms weren't ordered.
Foster put a camera over there.
But yeah, on Wednesday we went to play and it's just gone.
Finally, Riley.
That's probably the 5th or 6th lot we put
I
on
know,
there,
I'm
but
like,
it's not
right.
even in here. It's insane.
Kevin McKee finally, and I said, don't even need it.
Was snow taken out of it?
I didn't notice anything. I mean,
6 bags
You
of
don't allow
chocolate.
this more.
Someone thought it was something else.
6 bags of chocolate.
that's all I got.
There is zero order at this moment. Can I get a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Yes, I motion to adjourn this meeting.
All in favor, say aye.
I need a
Opposed,
second.
same sign. Oh, sorry.
Second.
I feel like I heard it was in there.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.
I was gonna hold it.
I was thinking, I like, yeah, keep my pants.
Tired.